Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. Slaviana stood by the window, her heart heavy with a tumultuous mix of emotions. She was pregnant, a fact that should have filled her with joy, but instead she felt a deep, gnawing pain. The sight before her eyes only intensified her anguish. Across the street, her former lover Igor walked hand in hand with his new girlfriend Lenka. They seemed so happy, so carefree, and it was this image that cut through Slaviana like a knife. She remembered the years she and Igor had spent together, the shared dreams and whispered promises. They had built a life, or so she thought, until Lenka appeared and everything crumbled. Igor's betrayal was a wound that refused to heal, festering with each side of his new relationship. The memories of his touch, his voice, his love were now tainted with the bitterness of his abandonment. Slaviana's hands trembled as she watched them. She felt a sickening twist of jealousy. Lenka was everything she wasn't, and it burned to see Igor so devoted to her. She recalled the day he left, his cold, detached eyes, the empty words he used to justify his departure. He had turned his back on her, on their history, with such ease that it left her questioning every moment they had shared. The life growing inside her was a reminder of what she had lost. The baby was a part of Igor, a symbol of a future that had been ripped away. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the small, reassuring movement of the child within. Yet even this could not soothe the storm inside her. Igor and Lenka stopped, exchanging a kiss that seemed to last an eternity. Slaviana's chest tightened, and she turned away from the window, unable to bear the sight any longer. The room seemed colder, the shadows darker. Every corner whispered of her isolation and heartache. The village around her was filled with stories, old superstitions and legends that spoke of dark powers and forbidden magics. In her desperation, these tales began to take on a new, terrifying appeal. Slaviana's mind wandered to the stories of Agafia, the old witch who lived on the village's outskirts. People said she had powers, that she could change the course of one's fate with her spells and potions. The thought of seeking her out was both terrifying and strangely comforting. The idea of using magic to win back Igor, to disrupt his happiness with Lenka, began to grow, fed by her pain and longing. The night descended, and with it came a silence that felt suffocating. Slaviana knew she could not continue like this. She could not bear to see Igor with Lenka every day, to live with the constant reminder of his betrayal. She needed to do something, anything, to reclaim her life. Her decision was made. She would find Agafia, no matter the cost. The old superstitions be damned, she would embrace the darkness if it meant a chance at peace. With a final glance at the window, where Igor and Lenka's silhouettes had long since disappeared, she steeled herself for the journey ahead. The path she was about to take was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but in her heart, the fire of determination burned bright. Slaviana would not be a passive victim of fate. She would fight for her happiness, even if it meant delving into the shadows of the unknown. Slaviana's home had become a prison of sorrow and frustration. The walls that once echoed with laughter now seemed to close in on her, suffocating her with their silence. Her father, once a pillar of strength, had turned into a perpetual source of irritation. He grumbled about everything: the state of the house, the weather, even the way she carried herself. His once gentle voice had hardened, and his words cut through her like shards of ice. Her mother was no better. She had become a ghost in her own home, moving through the rooms with an air of indifference. She barely acknowledged Slaviana's presence, let alone her pain. The betrayal of Igor, the man Slaviana had loved deeply, was a burden she carried alone. Her mother's cold detachment only deepened the chasm of loneliness that yawned within her. The house itself felt hostile. Every creak of the floorboards, every draft of cold air seemed to whisper her failures. The kitchen, where her mother used to hum as she cooked, was now a silent testament to their fractured relationship. Meals were eaten in silence, the clinking of cutlery the only sound, as if they were strangers forced to share a space. Slaviana's room, her one refuge, had become a place of torment. It was filled with reminders of a happier past, photographs of her and Igor smiling, love letters filled with promises now broken, and small tokens of affection that had once seemed eternal. Each item was a dagger to her heart, a reminder of what she had lost. The bed where she had dreamed of a future with Igor was now a place of restless nights and tear-soaked pillows. The village around her was no sanctuary. Gossip spread like wildfire, and the villagers' whispers followed her wherever she went. She could feel their eyes on her, their pitying glances mixed with judgment. The betrayal was not just personal, it was public. Everyone knew, and everyone had an opinion. Their murmurs were a constant reminder that she was alone in her suffering. Every day was a battle against the overwhelming sense of isolation. She longed for a kind word, a comforting touch, but found none. Her father's grumbling and her mother's neglect were the harsh symphony of her life now. The emptiness of the house echoed the emptiness inside her. She wandered through her days like a ghost, her spirit crushed under the weight of her grief. The evenings were the worst. As darkness fell, the house seemed to come alive with the shadows of her fears and regrets. The wind outside howled like a mournful specter, and the creaking of the old house sounded like the groans of a tormented soul. She would sit by the window, staring into the blackness, feeling the weight of her loneliness pressing down on her chest. Slaviana's only solace was the life growing inside her, a fragile beacon of hope in her desolate world. She would place her hand on her swelling belly and feel the gentle movements of her unborn child. It was a reminder that despite everything, life continued. Yet, even this small comfort was tinged with sadness, as she couldn't help but think of the future her child would have without a father's love. The betrayal of Igor had left a scar that would never heal, and her family's coldness only deepened her wounds. Slaviana was adrift in a sea of sorrow, her heart heavy with the weight of her loss. The love that had once filled her life was gone, replaced by a void that threatened to consume her. In the stillness of the night, she would often wonder if she would ever find her way out of the darkness, or if she was destined to remain a prisoner of her pain and loneliness forever. In the heart of the village, nestled amid dense forests and rolling hills, lived a dark legend that had been passed down through generations. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of Agafia, the witch who resided on the outskirts, in a dilapidated cottage that seemed to merge with the shadows of the forest. Her name alone was enough to send shivers down the spines of the bravest men and evoke fearful glances among the elderly, who clutched their rosaries and muttered prayers of protection. Agafia's reputation was steeped in fear and mysticism. It was said that she possessed the uncanny ability to transform into animals: a black cat slinking through the night, an owl with piercing eyes watching from the treetops, or a raven cawing ominously from the village roofs. Her transformations were not merely tales of fancy, but were believed to be witnessed by those unfortunate enough to cross her path after dusk. Parents warned their children to stay away from the forest's edge, especially as the sun dipped below the horizon. The stories told around the hearths were filled with chilling details of her power. Agafia was rumored to have an insatiable hunger for the life force of the innocent. Mothers held their babies close, fearing the night when the witch would come for their precious ones, stealing their vitality to sustain her own cursed existence. Villagers recounted sightings of strange lights flickering in the windows of Agafia's cottage, accompanied by the eerie sound of chanting in a language unknown and unsettling. Some claimed to have seen her gathering herbs and roots under the moonlight, her silhouette bending and twisting in ways that defied human anatomy. The more superstitious swore that the forest itself seemed to bend to her will, the trees whispering her secrets and the winds carrying her malicious intent. Despite the pervasive fear, there was a morbid curiosity about Agafia. The younger villagers, those with a taste for danger and a penchant for testing boundaries, dared each other to approach her domain. They would venture close enough to glimpse the overgrown path leading to her home, their courage faltering at the sight of her shadow moving behind the grimy windows. Those who dared too much often returned pale and shaken, their bravado stripped away by an encounter with the unknown. The elders spoke of the witch with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. They remembered a time when Agafia was not just a figure of terror, but a healer, a woman with an unparalleled knowledge of the natural world. She had helped bring babies into the world, cured the sick, and eased the dying into their final rest. But something had changed. A darkness had taken root in her soul, transforming her from a revered healer to a feared outcast. The village folklore was rich with stories of her malevolence. They told of a farmer who had offended Agafia, only to find his crops withered overnight and his livestock sickened with mysterious ailments. There was the tale of the young bride who had laughed at the witch's tattered clothes and who then suffered a sudden and inexplicable illness that left her weak and bedridden. These stories were recounted with a solemn nod, as if to remind everyone of the dangers of crossing Agafia. For Slaviana, these tales were more than mere stories. They were a grim reminder of the power that lay just beyond the safety of the village, a power she might have to confront. The thought of seeking Agafia's help was terrifying, but the pain of her betrayal and the desperation for resolution pushed her towards considering the unthinkable. As the village slept, haunted by their own fears, Slaviana lay awake, pondering the dark path that might lead her to the witch's door. As the silhouettes of Igor and Lenka faded into the twilight, a tempest of emotions churned within Slaviana. The pain of betrayal, the sting of jealousy, and the weight of loneliness pressed heavily on her chest. Watching Igor, the man she had loved for years, walk away with another woman was a wound that cut deeper than she ever thought possible. Her thoughts were a tangled web of sorrow and anger, but within that turmoil, a dangerous resolve began to form. Slaviana's heart pounded as she contemplated her next move. The tales of Agafia, the village witch, were not merely folklore to her, they were a mix of fear and hope. Her mind raced back to the stories whispered in fear, the transformations, the curses, the eerie lights in the old woman's cottage. Yet amidst these terrifying images, a spark of determination ignited. She would seek out Agafia and her dark arts. The idea was both terrifying and intoxicating. Her religious upbringing clashed violently with her desperate need. The priests had always warned against dabbling in the dark arts, painting vivid pictures of eternal damnation and soul corruption. But what choice did she have? Igor had been her world, and now that world had been shattered. She felt the icy fingers of despair closing around her heart, threatening to choke the life out of her. In that moment, fear of divine retribution seemed to She set her jaw and took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. She would do whatever it took to win Igor back, to shatter the enchantment she was convinced Lenka had cast over him. Slaviana's footsteps were almost silent on the worn path that led to the edge of the village. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl, made her pulse quicken, but she pressed on. The forest loomed ahead, dark and forbidding, a living entity that seemed to whisper threats and warnings. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, casting eerie, elongated shadows that danced in the corner of her vision. The path to Agafia's cottage was narrow and overgrown, a testament to how seldom it was traveled. As Slaviana ventured deeper into the woods, she felt the weight of the village's stories pressing down on her. Her fear was a constant companion, whispering that she should turn back, that seeking help from the witch could only lead to more pain and suffering. But her desperation was a stronger voice, urging her forward, promising a chance to reclaim what was lost. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive, as she neared the clearing where Agafia's cottage stood. Slaviana paused at the edge, her breath hitching in her throat. The sight of the dilapidated structure, half hidden by gnarled trees and creeping vines, sent a chill down her spine. It looked like something out of a nightmare, a place where light and hope dared not venture. Gathering her courage, Slaviana stepped into the clearing. The ground beneath her feet felt different here, as if the earth itself was tainted by the dark magic that seeped from the cottage. She approached the door, her heart thudding so loudly she feared it might wake the dead. Raising a trembling hand, she knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally in the still night, a hollow, foreboding noise that seemed to linger in the air. Moments passed like hours, each second filled with the dread of what might come next. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. Agafia's eyes, glinting like polished stones, met Slaviana's. The witch's presence was overwhelming, a palpable force that seemed to root Slaviana to the spot. "I know why you're here." Agafia's voice was a rasp, like the rustle of dry leaves. "Come in, if you dare." Slaviana hesitated, her fears clawing at her resolve, but the image of Igor and Lenka together burned in her mind. She stepped inside, crossing the threshold into a world where light and darkness danced a dangerous dance, and where she would find out if she had the strength to confront the witch and the consequences of the path she had chosen. Slaviana's footsteps echoed in her mind as she stepped into Agafia's dimly lit cottage. The air inside was thick with the scent of dried herbs and something else, something darker and more sinister. Shadows flickered on the walls, cast by the flickering light of a solitary candle. Agafia, the old witch, moved with an eerie grace, her eyes never leaving Slaviana. "You believe Lenka has bewitched him," Agafia stated rather than asked, her voice a rasp that sent shivers down Slaviana's spine. The young woman nodded, her throat too tight to speak. For weeks, the village had been abuzz with whispers and rumors. Lenka, with her sudden charm and beauty, had cast a spell on Igor, everyone said. Slaviana had heard the stories, the tales of love potions and enchanted trinkets, and she had believed them. How else could she explain Igor's sudden coldness, his abrupt departure from their life together? "I need your help," Slaviana finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "I need to break whatever spell she has cast on him. I need him back." Agafia's eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something predatory. She gestured for Slaviana to sit, her gnarled hand pointing to a worn chair near the hearth. Slaviana complied, her heart pounding so hard she feared it might burst. "The magic of the heart is a dangerous thing," Agafia said, her voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "Breaking it is even more perilous. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Slaviana swallowed hard. Consequences? What could be worse than the pain she was already feeling? The agony of watching Igor with another woman, of knowing he had been stolen from her by unnatural means. She nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice steadier now. "Just help me." Agafia's smile was a thin, cruel thing. She began to move around the room, gathering items from shelves and cupboards. Dried flowers, strange roots, and small vials filled with dark liquids. She placed them on a table in front of Slaviana, each object a piece of a dark puzzle that would, she hoped, bring her beloved back. "This will not be easy," Agafia warned as she worked. "And it will not be without a price. Magic always demands payment." Slaviana's heart sank a little at the ominous words, but she pushed her fear aside. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Agafia began to chant in a language Slaviana didn't recognize, her hands moving in intricate patterns over the gathered items. The air seemed to grow colder, and the shadows on the walls twisted into unsettling shapes. Slaviana watched in awe and fear as the witch's magic took form. Finally, Agafia handed her a small vial filled with a murky, swirling liquid. "This is a potion of reversal," she explained. "It will break the spell, but it must be given directly to Igor. And remember, once broken, the heart may never be the same." Slaviana took the vial, her fingers trembling. She knew the risk she was taking, but the thought of losing Igor forever was unbearable. She nodded her thanks to Agafia and stood to leave, clutching the vial to her chest like a lifeline. "One more thing," Agafia said, her voice stopping Slaviana at the door. "If you fail, the consequences will be dire. The magic will turn on you, and your heart will bear the burden." Slaviana nodded again, her mind already set. She stepped out of the cottage and into the night, the weight of the vial heavy in her hand. The path back to the village seemed longer and darker, every rustle of the leaves and snap of a twig amplifying her anxiety. But she pressed on, her determination fueled by love and desperation. As she neared the village, she could see the faint glow of lights from the houses. She knew where she would find Igor and Lenka, and her heart beat faster with a mix of fear and anticipation. She clutched the vial tighter, a silent promise to herself that she would succeed, no matter the cost. Slaviana's mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. She pictured Igor's face, the way he used to look at her with love and tenderness. She imagined that look returning, imagined him breaking free of Lenka's spell and coming back to her. It was this vision that kept her moving forward, step by determined step, into the unknown. Slaviana's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the edge of the village, where the forest began its dark, creeping embrace. The path to Agafia's house was well-worn but ominous, shrouded in shadows cast by ancient trees. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, burdened by a mix of fear and determination. She had heard the stories all her life, tales of Agafia the witch, who lived on the outskirts and dabbled in dark arts. The villagers spoke of her in hushed tones, sharing rumors of her power and the dreadful price of her help. As Slaviana walked, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest hint of Agafia's presence. The forest seemed to close in around her, the once familiar path now twisted and foreboding. She clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders, as if it could protect her from the creeping dread that settled in her bones. Finally, she saw Agafia's cottage, half hidden behind a thicket of thorny bushes. The structure was ancient, its wooden walls warped and weathered by time. A dim light flickered from within, casting eerie shadows through the cracked windows. Slaviana took a deep breath, steeling herself against the wave of fear that threatened to overtake her. She had come too far to turn back now. She hesitated for a moment at the door, her hand hovering over the rough wood. Gathering her courage, she knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally in the stillness, and she felt as if the entire forest was listening. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Agafia's piercing eyes peering out from the darkness within. The old woman's gaze was unsettling, sharp and knowing. Without a word, she stepped aside, allowing Slaviana to enter. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and something more sinister, something that made the hairs on the back of Slaviana's neck stand on end. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of strange ingredients and ancient tomes. The dim light came from a single candle, its flame dancing as if alive. Agafia moved with a grace that belied her age, her gnarled fingers gesturing for Slaviana to sit at a small table in the center of the room. "You have come for help," she said, her voice a raspy whisper that seemed to seep into Slaviana's very soul. Slaviana nodded, her mouth dry. "I need your magic," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I need to break the spell that has taken Igor from me. I believe Lenka has bewitched him." Agafia's eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and something darker. "Magic of the heart is the most perilous," she said slowly. "Breaking it can have dire consequences. Are you prepared to pay the price?" Slaviana swallowed hard. The thought of losing Igor forever was unbearable, a torment she could not endure. "I'll do whatever it takes," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Agafia nodded, as if she had expected this answer. She began to move around the room, collecting various items: dried herbs, strange roots, and small vials filled with murky liquids. As she worked, she chanted in a language Slaviana did not understand, her words a haunting melody that filled the small cottage. Slaviana watched in a mixture of awe and terror as Agafia's magic took form. The air grew colder, and the shadows on the walls seemed to twist and writhe. Finally, the old witch handed her a small vial filled with a dark, swirling potion. "This will break the spell," Agafia said, her voice grave. "But it must be given directly to Igor. And remember, the heart, once broken, may never heal the same." Slaviana took the vial, her fingers trembling. She knew the risk she was taking, but the thought of Igor in Lenka's arms was more than she could bear. She nodded her thanks and turned to leave, the weight of the vial heavy in her hand. As she stepped out of the cottage, the night seemed darker, the forest more menacing. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig sent her heart racing, but her resolve was firm. She would face any danger, endure any fear, to bring Igor back. The path back to the village felt longer, each step a battle against the rising tide of dread. But Slaviana pressed on, her determination fueled by love and desperation. She could see the faint glow of the village lights in the distance, a beacon of hope in the surrounding darkness. She knew where she would find Igor and Lenka, and her heart quickened with a mix of fear and anticipation. Clutching the vial tighter, she made a silent promise to herself she would succeed, no matter the cost. The shadows seemed to reach out for her, but she moved forward, driven by a resolve that burned brighter than any fear. Slaviana's mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. She pictured Igor's face, the way he used to look at her with love and tenderness. She imagined that look returning, imagined him breaking free of Lenka's spell and coming back to her. It was this vision that kept her moving forward, step by determined step, into the unknown. As Slaviana entered the dimly lit cottage, the weight of her resolve clashed with the eerie atmosphere that permeated the room. The shadows seemed to cling to every surface, whispering secrets of ancient and forgotten magic. Agathia stood by a wooden table cluttered with mysterious herbs and strange artifacts, her eyes gleaming with a light that seemed both wise and weary. Slaviana's heart pounded as she approached the old witch, the vial clutched tightly in her hand. She had come seeking aid in her desperate bid to reclaim Igor, but as she looked into Agathia's piercing eyes, doubt began to gnaw at her confidence. "I need your help," Slaviana began, her voice trembling slightly. "Igor has been taken from me by a spell. I believe Lenka used a love potion to bind him to her. I need to break it, to bring him back to me." Agathia regarded her silently for a moment, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her voice a raspy whisper that seemed to echo through the small room. "Child, you come seeking vengeance, but that path is fraught with darkness. Magic, especially of the heart, is not to be wielded lightly." Slaviana's grip on the vial tightened. "I don't seek vengeance," she insisted. "I seek justice. Igor belongs with me. Lenka has taken him unfairly." The old witch sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I did not know of Lenka's plans," she said softly. "Had I known, I would have never provided her with such a potion. Love, when manipulated by magic, becomes a twisted and fragile thing." Slaviana felt a pang of anger and frustration. "But you did help her," she said, her voice rising. "And now you must help me. You must undo what you have done." Agathia shook her head slowly. "I cannot," she said. "To interfere further would only bring more harm. The balance must be maintained. Magic has a way of exacting its own price." Slaviana's eyes filled with tears of desperation. "But what about my pain? What about the love that has been stolen from me?" Agathia's gaze softened, and for a moment she seemed less like a witch and more like a sorrowful, wise elder. "I understand your pain," she said gently, "and I am truly sorry for the role I played in this, but I cannot undo what has been done. The magic must run its course." Slaviana felt a wave of hopelessness wash over her. "So there is nothing you can do?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The old witch reached out and placed a gnarled hand on Slaviana's shoulder. "There is one thing," she said softly. "I can offer you guidance and protection. You must find the strength within yourself to face this trial. Magic can be a tool, but it is the strength of your heart that will ultimately prevail." Slaviana looked into Agathia's eyes and saw a flicker of genuine compassion. Despite her initial fear and anger, she realized that the old witch was not her enemy. She nodded slowly, accepting the harsh truth. "I will find a way," she said, her voice resolute. "I will bring Igor back, but not through vengeance or hatred. I will find the strength within myself." Agathia smiled faintly, a rare and almost forgotten expression. "That is the true power," she said. "Love, when it is pure and untainted by magic, can overcome even the darkest of spells. Go now, and may your heart guide you." With those words, Slaviana turned and left the cottage, the vial still in her hand. The night seemed a little less dark, and the path before her a little clearer. She would face the trials ahead with the strength of her heart, determined to reclaim her love without succumbing to the shadows of vengeance. Slaviana's heart raced as she stood before Agathia, the overwhelming weight of her despair nearly suffocating her. The old witch's cottage, dimly lit and filled with the scent of ancient herbs, seemed to close in around her. Slaviana's voice quivered with desperation as she pleaded, "Please, I need something to harm Lenka. She has taken everything from me." Agathia studied her with eyes that seemed to pierce through to her very soul. Slaviana could see the flicker of something ancient and powerful in those eyes, something that both frightened and fascinated her. The old woman's voice, when she spoke, was calm and measured. "You do not truly wish to harm her, child. Such a path will only deepen your suffering." Slaviana's resolve wavered for a moment, but the raw pain of Igor's betrayal surged within her. "I have no choice," she insisted. "I need to make her suffer as I am suffering. It is the only way." Agathia sighed, the sound echoing with the weight of countless lifetimes. She reached out, her gnarled hand resting gently on Slaviana's trembling arm. "Desperation blinds you to the truth," she said softly. "But I see your pain, and I will not ignore it. I will help you, but not in the way you seek." Slaviana's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and confusion. "What do you mean?" "If you truly wish for my aid, you must stay here tonight," Agaphia replied. "There are rituals to be performed and truths to be revealed that cannot be rushed. Trust in my wisdom, and I will guide you." Slaviana hesitated, the fear of the unknown battling with her desperation. Yet something in the old witch's demeanor calmed her frayed nerves. She nodded slowly, willing to place her trust in Agaphia's hands. "I will stay." The night deepened as Agaphia led Slaviana to a small room at the back of the cottage. It was sparsely furnished, with a simple bed and a window that overlooked the dark forest beyond. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling quiet, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. "Rest here for now," Agaphia instructed. "At midnight, we will begin." Slaviana lay down, the events of the day swirling in her mind. She couldn't shake the image of Igor and Lenka, their laughter haunting her every thought. Exhausted by her turmoil, she eventually drifted into a restless sleep. She awoke with a start to the sound of soft chanting. The room was illuminated by the glow of a single candle, its flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. Agaphia stood at the foot of the bed, her voice a low murmur of ancient words. "It is time," the witch said, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. "Come with me." Slaviana followed Agaphia to the main room, where a circle of candles had been arranged on the floor. In the center lay a bowl filled with a dark, shimmering liquid. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the hum of arcane energy. "Kneel here," Agaphia instructed, guiding Slaviana to the edge of the circle. "This ritual will cleanse your spirit and reveal the path you must take. Do not be afraid." As Slaviana knelt, Agaphia began to chant, her voice rising and falling in a hypnotic cadence. The flames of the candles seemed to dance in time with her words, casting a mesmerizing glow. Slaviana felt a strange warmth enveloping her, a sense of calm washing over her troubled mind. The liquid in the bowl began to swirl, forming intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with life. Agaphia's chanting grew louder, filling the room with an overwhelming power. Slaviana's vision blurred, and she felt herself being drawn into the swirling depths of the bowl. Images flashed before her eyes, memories of her time with Igor, moments of joy and sorrow, and finally the painful betrayal. Yet interwoven with these memories were glimpses of something else, an ancient strength, a light that had always been within her but had been overshadowed by her despair. Agaphia's voice cut through the visions. "You have the power to heal your own heart, Slaviana. The magic I offer is not to harm, but to heal. Embrace the strength within you, and you will find your way." Slaviana felt tears streaming down her face, a release of the pain she had held for so long. As the ritual reached its climax, the visions faded, leaving her with a profound sense of clarity and peace. The candle flames flickered one last time and then extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Slaviana felt Agaphia's hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "Your journey is not over," the old witch said softly, "but you are stronger than you know. Trust in yourself, and you will overcome this trial." Slaviana rose to her feet, a newfound determination burning within her. She thanked Agaphia, feeling a deep gratitude for the wisdom and guidance she had received. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but she was no longer afraid. With each step away from the witch's cottage, Slaviana felt the weight of her despair lifting, replaced by a fierce resolve. She would face her future not with vengeance, but with the strength of her own heart, ready to reclaim her life and her love on her own terms. Agaphia's eyes gleamed with an ancient, knowing light as she prepared for the ritual. The air in the cottage grew thick with anticipation, the scent of burning herbs and candles creating a heady, almost suffocating atmosphere. Slaviana handed Agaphia a ribbon she had taken from Lenka's hair, a small, seemingly insignificant item that now carried the weight of her hopes and desires. "This will do," Agaphia murmured, holding the ribbon aloft. She moved with a purposeful grace, setting the ribbon in the center of a carefully arranged circle of symbols and talismans on the floor. "The connection between this object and its owner will allow me to seek the truth and deliver justice." Slaviana watched with wide eyes as Agafia began the incantation, her voice a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the cottage. The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the room. Agafia's words grew louder and more insistent, a rhythmic chant that filled Slaviana with both dread and anticipation. As the ritual progressed, the ribbon started to twist and writhe as if it were alive. A dark, swirling mist began to rise from it, filling the circle with an ominous energy. Agafia's eyes were closed, her face a mask of concentration and power. The ancient symbols drawn on the floor glowed faintly, pulsing in time with her chant. Slaviana felt a chill run down her spine, but she held her ground, her resolve unshaken. This was her only chance to set things right. She watched as the mist coalesced into a shadowy figure, vaguely resembling Lenka. The figure writhed and struggled, as if trying to escape some unseen force. Lenka used dark magic to ensnare Igor. Agafia intoned, her voice filled with a terrible authority. But such actions cannot go unpunished. The balance must be restored. Slaviana's heart pounded in her chest. She had come seeking revenge, but now, confronted with the tangible manifestation of Lenka's treachery, she felt a mix of emotions: anger, sorrow, and a deep sense of betrayal. Agafia reached into the circle, her hand passing through the shadowy figure. As she did, a burst of light erupted, causing Slaviana to shield her eyes. When she looked again, the mist was gone, replaced by a small, glowing orb that hovered above the ribbon. This orb contains the essence of Lenka's deceit, Agafia explained. With it, you can reveal the truth to Igor and break the spell she has cast upon him. But be warned, such knowledge comes with a price. Slaviana hesitated, her hand hovering above the orb. What price, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Agafia's gaze softened, a hint of sorrow in her ancient eyes. The truth can be a double-edged sword. It may free Igor, but it will also change him. Be prepared for the consequences of your actions. Slaviana nodded, her resolve firm. She reached out and grasped the orb, feeling its warmth and energy course through her. Agafia stepped back, her task complete. Take this with you, the old witch said, handing Slaviana a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. When the time is right, pour this over the orb. It will release its power and reveal the truth to Igor. Slaviana thanked Agafia, her heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. As she left the cottage, the night air felt cool and refreshing, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere inside. She held the orb and vial close, determined to see her plan through. The journey back to the village was a blur of thoughts and emotions. Slaviana knew that confronting Igor with the truth would not be easy, but she was ready. The darkness of the night seemed less daunting now, filled with the promise of justice and a chance to reclaim what she had lost. As she approached her home, she steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. With Agafia's magic in her hands and a newfound strength in her heart, Slaviana was prepared to face whatever came next. The truth would be revealed and justice would be served. Inside Agafia's cottage, darkness enveloped every corner, only pierced by the flickering light of candles arranged haphazardly around the room. The air was thick with the scent of dried herbs, mingling with the faint aroma of something sweet and pungent, perhaps a lingering trace of previous rituals. Despite the chill that seeped through the wooden walls, there was an odd sense of comfort and safety within the space. Agafia herself moved with the quiet confidence of someone long accustomed to the mysteries of the unseen world. Her face, weathered by time and wisdom, bore the marks of countless years spent delving into the ancient arts. As Slaviana entered, the old woman's eyes, sharp and piercing, softened with a hint of sympathy. "Come, child," Agafia beckoned gently, her voice a low murmur that seemed to echo off the walls. "Sit by the fire and warm yourself. You've come seeking answers, and you shall have them." Slaviana hesitated, momentarily overwhelmed by the eerie ambience of the cottage. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by the flickering candlelight, creating shapes that seemed to move with a life of their own. Yet, despite the foreboding atmosphere, there was an undeniable sense that here, within the confines of Agafia's domain, Slaviana was shielded from the harsh realities outside. Agafia draped a thick woolen shawl around Slaviana's shoulders, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill of the room. The shawl was woven with intricate patterns, each thread telling a silent tale of forgotten spells and ancient rites. As Slaviana nestled into its embrace, a strange calm settled over her. "There," child, Agafia said softly, settling into a creaking wooden chair opposite Slaviana. "You are safe here. Tell me of your troubles, and together we shall find a way to set things right." Slaviana looked into Agafia's eyes, finding solace in their depth and wisdom. She recounted the torment of betrayal, the ache of loss, and the burning desire for justice that had driven her to seek out the old witch. Agafia listened intently, nodding occasionally, as if she already knew the tale woven into the fabric of Slaviana's life. "You seek to right a grievous wrong," Agafia finally spoke, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to echo through the cottage. "But vengeance is a dangerous path, my dear. It can consume you as surely as the darkness outside." Slaviana felt a pang of uncertainty, but the resolve that had brought her here remained steadfast. She knew the risks, but she also knew that turning back now would mean surrendering everything she held dear. "I must know the truth," Slaviana whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling of the fire. "I must find a way to break the hold she has over him." Agafia nodded slowly, her expression grave yet tinged with a hint of admiration. "Very well, child. We shall seek the truth together, but remember this: the path ahead is fraught with peril. Trust in my guidance, and we shall unravel the darkness that threatens to consume you." As the fire crackled and cast dancing shadows across the room, Slaviana found herself drawn into Agafia's world of ancient magic and forgotten lore. Here, surrounded by the scent of herbs and the whisper of incantations, she dared to hope that justice, however elusive, was within reach. Slaviana remained through the night at Agafia's cottage, the air thick with anticipation and ancient power. As the last embers of twilight faded into the inky blackness outside, Agafia prepared for the ritual that would unfold. The room seemed to pulse with a subdued energy, fueled by the presence of herbs and arcane symbols scattered across the floor. Slaviana watched in awe and trepidation as Agafia moved with deliberate grace, her movements a dance of ancient knowledge. Each gesture, each incantation whispered under her breath, resonated with a power that Slaviana could feel deep within her bones. Agafia's voice, though aged and weathered, carried an authority that demanded attention. "Child," she spoke softly but firmly to Slaviana, "what we are about to undertake carries consequences. Magic is not without its price, and you must be prepared to pay it." Slaviana nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. She had come seeking justice, seeking to break the hold that Lenka's enchantments had woven around Igor. Yet now, faced with the reality of ancient rituals and their inherent risks, she felt a tremor of uncertainty. "Trust in the strength of your resolve," Agafia continued, her eyes fixed on Slaviana with unwavering intensity. "The bonds we weave tonight will reach beyond the veil of ordinary existence. But remember, every thread has its end, and every spell its consequence." As the night deepened and the moon reached its zenith, Agafia began the ritual in earnest. Slaviana's heart pounded in rhythm with the cadence of Agafia's chants, the air thickening with the scent of burning herbs and the faint crackle of unseen energies. Shapes shimmered in the darkness, fleeting glimpses of spectral forms that seemed to hover on the edge of perception. Slaviana's senses were heightened, attuned to the mystical currents that ebbed and flowed around them. She could feel the weight of Agafia's experience guiding the ritual, anchoring it in the ancient rhythms of the earth and sky. Hours passed like moments as Agafia wove spells of protection and revelation, drawing upon the unseen forces that permeated the cottage. Slaviana's mind swirled with a kaleidoscope of emotions: fear, determination, and a flicker of hope that this night would bring the answers she sought. Finally, as the first rays of dawn painted the horizon in hues of amber and gold, Agafia's chanting softened to a murmur. The air around them seemed to sigh with release, the tension of the ritual dissipating like mist in the morning sun. "It is done," Agafia declared, her voice echoing with a solemn finality. "The threads have been set in motion. Now, child, prepare yourself. The path ahead may not be as you expect." Slaviana felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration wash over her. She knew that the night's events had set in motion forces beyond her control, Yet she also knew that she had taken a step closer to uncovering the truth, to reclaiming what had been lost to enchantment and betrayal. As she stood beside Agafia, bathed in the first light of a new day, Slaviana felt a strange sense of gratitude for the old witch's guidance. Together, they had ventured into the realm of ancient magic, where the line between reality and myth blurred into whispers carried on the wind. And in that fragile moment between darkness and dawn, Slaviana glimpsed the flicker of a path forward, a path illuminated by the faint promise of justice yet to be realized. Agafia's promise hung heavy in the air, a pact forged in the depths of ancient knowledge and whispered incantations. As Slaviana stood before the old witch, her resolve hardened despite the swirling doubts that gnawed at her. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls of Agafia's dimly lit cottage, enhancing the sense of otherworldly power that permeated the room. Child Agafia's voice rasped with age, yet held a steely determination to undo what has been done. We must tread paths few dare to follow. The potion I prepare will unravel the ties that bind Igor to that enchantress. Slaviana's heart clenched with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the risks of meddling with such potent forces, yet the ache of betrayal and the desperate longing to reclaim what was hers propelled her forward. I will do whatever it takes, Slaviana whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I cannot bear to see him lost to her. Agafia nodded slowly, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that belied her age. Then we begin, she declared, her weathered hands reaching for vials and herbs arranged on a makeshift altar. The air thickened with the pungent scent of exotic ingredients mingling with the lingering aroma of burning sage. With practiced precision, Agafia measured out each ingredient, chanting ancient verses under her breath. Slaviana watched in awe as the witch's movements became a rhythmic dance of magic, each motion imbued with purpose and intent. The potion bubbled and hissed in its vessel, releasing vapors that shimmered with iridescence in the dim light. Give me a token, Agafia instructed, her gaze piercing Slaviana's soul. Something of hers to bind the spell. Slaviana hesitated for a moment, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a delicate necklace that once belonged to Lenka. She handed it to Agafia, who accepted it with a solemn nod. This will do, she murmured, her fingers closing around the pendant with a firm grip. The ritual continued through the night, the hours slipping away unnoticed as Agafia poured her knowledge and will into the potion. Slaviana's mind swirled with a cacophony of emotions, fear of the unknown consequences, anger at Lenka's deception, and a flicker of hope that soon burned bright within her. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, Agafia's voice rose to a crescendo, the final incantations echoing through the cottage. The potion glowed with an eerie light, pulsating with the promise of retribution and justice. It is done, Agafia breathed, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. She handed the vial to Slaviana, who cradled it in her trembling hands. Go now, the witch urged, her voice softer now, tinged with a hint of regret. Use this wisely, for its power is not to be taken lightly. Slaviana nodded, her heart racing as she clutched the vial close to her chest. She knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril, yet in that moment she felt a surge of empowerment. With Agafia's magic coursing through her veins, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead to reclaim what was rightfully hers and to confront the enchantress who dared to steal her happiness. Leaving Agafia's cottage, Slaviana stepped into the crisp morning air, her mind ablaze with determination. The winds whispered secrets of ancient spells and forgotten promises, guiding her toward a destiny where justice awaited in the shadows of revenge. Agafia's warnings echoed ominously in the stillness of her cottage, a reminder of the precarious balance between wielding magic and succumbing to its dark consequences. Slaviana stood before the old witch, clutching the vial that pulsed with mystic energy, her resolve tempered by the weight of Agafia's words. Child, Agafia's voice croaked like wind through ancient trees. The path you tread is fraught with peril. Magic exacts a toll, often beyond what one bargains for. Be wary, for what you seek to undo may twist upon itself and bind you instead. Slaviana shivered despite the warmth of the shawl Agafia had draped over her shoulders. The air in the room seemed charged with an unseen force, shadows dancing at the periphery of her vision. I understand, Slaviana murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I cannot turn back now. Lenka has taken everything from me." Agafia's gaze bore into Slaviana, a mix of sympathy and ancient wisdom flickering in her eyes. "Know this, child," she intoned gravely, "I will shield Lenka from harm, for she too is bound by forces greater than herself. My helpers will ensure her safety, though their identities shall remain veiled." A chill swept through Slaviana as she contemplated the unseen guardians. Agafia spoke of beings who existed beyond mortal comprehension, guardians of the natural order. She feared their wrath even as she clung to the desperate hope that Agafia's magic would tip the scales in her favor. "Take heed," Agafia continued, her voice softening slightly, "and remember that magic seeks equilibrium. What you sow in vengeance may reap a bitter harvest. Proceed with caution, for the line between justice and vengeance is thin, and the consequences may haunt you long after the deed is done." With those words lingering in the air like a lingering fog, Agafia gestured toward the door, her aged face etched with a mix of concern and resignation. Slaviana nodded solemnly, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. She knew now that the path ahead would not be without sacrifice, and the boundaries between right and wrong blurred in the haze of magic and desperation. Leaving Agafia's cottage, Slaviana walked into the uncertain dawn, the vial clutched tightly in her hand. She was determined to reclaim what was rightfully hers, yet a seed of doubt had been planted, one that whispered of unseen forces and the inevitability of cosmic justice. As she disappeared into the morning mist, the shadows of Agafia's warnings trailed behind her, a reminder of the fragile threads that bound the world of mortals to the realm of magic. As night descended upon Agafia's secluded cottage, the air thickened with an unsettling stillness. Slaviana, nestled in the small guest room, felt unease creep into her bones as strange and unnerving events began to unfold around her. It started with whispers, indistinct murmurs that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, carrying a sinister tone that sent shivers down her spine. The ancient wooden beams creaked overhead, their groans mingling with the unsettling symphony of the night. Then came the sharp sound of shattering pottery, echoing through the dimly lit corridors like an ominous warning. Slaviana huddled in her bed, clutching the worn rosary beads in her trembling hands. The room flickered with shadows that seemed to move with a malevolent intent, their forms shifting and elongating against the walls. She dared not utter a word, afraid that her voice might invite the unseen horrors lurking in the darkness. Outside her room, the laughter began, a haunting, mirthless laughter that chilled her to the core. It echoed through the cottage, resonating in her ears like the mocking taunt of a malevolent spirit. Slaviana's heart raced, her breath quickened in fear, but she forced herself to remain still, listening, praying silently under her breath. In the midst of the chaos, Slaviana recited the Lord's Prayer fervently, each word a shield against the encroaching darkness. The room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality strained against the forces unleashed within Agafia's home. Time blurred as the night wore on, the eerie symphony of unsettling sounds and shadowy movements continuing unabated. Slaviana's resolve wavered, her mind haunted by the stories of restless spirits and vengeful entities that lurked in the corners of folklore. Yet she clung to her faith, seeking solace in the familiar verses that promised protection from unseen terrors. As dawn approached, the unsettling events gradually subsided, leaving Slaviana drained yet alive with a newfound awareness of the thin veil between the mundane and the supernatural. She emerged from the ordeal with a deeper respect for the mysteries that dwelled beyond mortal comprehension, and a solemn understanding that some nights were destined to haunt the soul long after the morning light had chased away the shadows. As night descended upon Agafia's cottage, a palpable darkness enveloped the surroundings, suffusing the air with an ominous weight. Slaviana, ensconced within the confines of the guest room, felt an unsettling presence that seemed to pervade every corner and crevice of the ancient dwelling. The room itself seemed to exhale a chilling breath, its walls seemingly alive with shifting shadows that danced with malevolent intent. Each flicker of the candle flame cast eerie silhouettes that twisted and contorted into grotesque forms, playing tricks on Slaviana's frayed nerves. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the faint rustle of curtains stirred by an unseen draft. In the stillness, whispers began to weave through the room, whispers that carried with them a sinister undertone, as if unseen entities conspired in hushed tones just beyond perception. Slaviana's heart quickened with each unexplained noise, the sudden rattle of window panes, the soft thud of footsteps echoing down empty corridors. Fear clawed at her mind, threatening to overwhelm her resolve, yet she remained rooted in place, her courage bolstered by a stubborn determination to see this night through. Then came the sensation of being watched, a sensation so intense it raised the hairs on the back of her neck. Shadows seemed to coalesce into figures that hovered at the edge of her vision, their presence palpable yet intangible, like a veil between the living and the spectral. The air grew colder, as if the very temperature conspired with the unseen forces to induce a creeping dread. Slaviana's breath misted in front of her, a physical manifestation of the fear that gripped her soul. She clutched the cross around her neck, seeking solace in the familiar symbol of faith against the encroaching darkness. Time lost its meaning as the night wore on, a relentless barrage of inexplicable phenomena that tested Slaviana's sanity. She fought against the rising tide of panic, clinging to the flickering light of her candle as if it were a lifeline in the storm. In the darkest hours before dawn, a sense of foreboding reached its zenith. The walls seemed to pulse with an ominous energy, their very essence saturated with the residue of ancient rituals and forbidden incantations. Slaviana's mind teetered on the brink of hysteria, her thoughts a jumble of prayers and desperate pleas for deliverance. Yet, as the first faint light of morning filtered through the windows, the oppressive weight of malevolence began to dissipate. The spectral whispers faded into the recesses of memory, leaving Slaviana to contemplate the harrowing ordeal she had endured. In the aftermath of that fateful night, Slaviana emerged with a newfound respect for the unseen forces that lurked in the shadows. She carried with her the indelible mark of an encounter with the unknown, a testament to the fragile boundary between the natural and the supernatural, and a reminder that some mysteries were best left undisturbed. Slaviana found herself plunged into an inexplicable realm where reality seemed to unravel at its seams, blurring the lines between what was possible and what defied all logic. It began with a sensation of weightlessness, as if gravity had relinquished its hold on her fragile form. The room around her dissolved into a swirling vortex of indistinct shapes and colors, leaving her suspended in a liminal space where time held no sway. Amidst this surreal tableau, Slaviana's senses were assaulted by a cacophony of whispers, faint, insistent murmurs that echoed through the ether, their words unintelligible yet laden with a palpable urgency. Each whispered syllable seemed to resonate deep within her psyche, stirring dormant fears and unsettling truths that lay buried beneath the veneer of everyday existence. As she navigated this ethereal labyrinth, Slaviana became acutely aware of a presence, a shadowy figure that flitted at the periphery of her vision, its form elusive and enigmatic. It moved with an otherworldly grace, its movements defying the constraints of earthly physics. A chill swept through her as it drew nearer, its presence both mesmerizing and foreboding. Then came the sensation of a gentle touch, a fleeting caress that brushed against her cheek like the whisper of a lover's kiss. It was at once intimate and disconcerting, a reminder of the ephemeral nature of the boundaries that delineate the realms of the living and the spectral. Amidst the disorienting swirl of sensations, Slaviana's gaze fell upon a solitary figure, a black cat with eyes that gleamed like twin orbs of obsidian. Its gaze bore into her with an unsettling intensity, as if peering into the depths of her soul. In its eyes she glimpsed ancient wisdom and arcane knowledge, a testament to the feline's role as a harbinger of mysteries yet untold. The cat moved with an ethereal grace, its movements fluid and purposeful as it wove through the shifting mists that enveloped Slaviana. With each step, it seemed to beckon her deeper into the labyrinth of her own subconscious, guiding her through the uncharted corridors of her fears and desires. In the midst of this surreal encounter, Slaviana's perception of reality blurred, a kaleidoscope of fleeting images and fragmented memories that danced at the edges of her consciousness. Time itself became a fleeting illusion, its passage marked by the ephemeral flicker of candlelight and the distant tolling of unseen bells. As the mystic experience unfolded, Slaviana found herself teetering on the brink of revelation, a profound understanding that transcended the confines of language and logic. In that fleeting moment of clarity, she glimpsed the interconnectedness of all things, the delicate balance between light and shadow, life and death, reality and unreality. And then, as swiftly as it had begun, the mystical reverie dissolved into the pre-dawn light, leaving Slaviana to grapple with the fragments of a truth that eluded easy comprehension. She emerged from the ordeal forever changed, her perception of the world colored by the lingering echoes of a journey into the unknown, a testament to the enduring power of the mystic experience and its profound impact on the human soul. Waking from a fitful sleep, Slaviana found herself enveloped by the eerie stillness of Agafia's ancient dwelling. The morning light filtered through dusty windows, casting elongated shadows that danced across the time-worn floorboards. The air was heavy with the scent of herbs and incense, lingering remnants of the mystic rituals that had unfolded during the night. Agafia, with her weathered face etched with lines of wisdom and secrecy, greeted Slaviana with a knowing smile. Her eyes held a glint of ancient knowledge, reflecting depths of experience that transcended mere mortal understanding. She moved gracefully around the dimly lit room, a figure steeped in the arcane arts and the mysteries of the beyond. Agafia murmured, her voice a soothing balm against the lingering echoes of the night's tumultuous events. She placed a delicate porcelain cup before Slaviana, filled with a steaming infusion that carried hints of chamomile and sage, a concoction brewed not only to warm the body but to calm the restless spirit. Beside the cup, Agafia placed a small vial containing a shimmering liquid, its iridescent hues catching the morning light like a captive rainbow. "This is the potion," she explained softly, her tone laced with solemnity. "It will empower the ritual, aligning the forces of nature to your will." Slaviana's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the vial, her fingers brushing against its cool surface. She felt a surge of apprehension mingled with a newfound resolve and acknowledgement of the path she had chosen, fraught with peril, yet driven by an unyielding desire for retribution. As she sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through her chilled body, Slaviana contemplated the weight of her choices. The events of the night had blurred the boundaries between reality and superstition, between the tangible and the ethereal. Now, faced with the tangible remnants of Agafia's mystic arts, she grappled with the consequences of invoking forces beyond mortal comprehension. The old woman watched Slaviana with a mixture of empathy and detachment, her gaze penetrating yet unreadable. She seemed to understand the turmoil raging within Slaviana's heart, the conflict between vengeance and forgiveness, between justice sought and the price to be paid. "We proceed," Agafia intoned solemnly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries-old traditions and the unspoken laws of the unseen realms. "But remember, child, every action in the realm of magic demands its due. The balance must be upheld." With those words hanging heavy in the air, Slaviana nodded in silent acceptance. She knew that the journey ahead would test her resolve and challenge her beliefs, yet she was determined to see it through to its conclusion. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow upon the tableau of two women bound by fate, an ancient crone and a desperate seeker of justice united in their pursuit of forces beyond comprehension, in a tale that blurred the line between horror and redemption. Agafia's aged hands cradled the vial of shimmering liquid, its contents swirling with an otherworldly luminescence as she turned to face Slaviana. The morning light filtering through the dusty windows lent an ethereal quality to the scene, casting elongated shadows that seemed to writhe with unseen energies. "Listen well," child Agafia began, her voice carrying the weight of ages past, "for the ritual we are about to embark upon is not without its conditions and consequences." Her eyes, deep and knowing, bore into Slaviana's, imparting a sense of solemnity that mirrored the gravity of their undertaking. She gestured for Slaviana to sit, the old wooden chair creaking beneath her weight. "This potion," Agafia continued, placing the vial gently on the worn wooden table between them, "is both a conduit and a catalyst. It will bind your intent to the forces that govern the realms beyond our own." Slaviana's gaze lingered on the vial, its liquid seeming to pulse with a life of its own. Fear and determination wrestled within her, each vying for dominance in her mind. Yet the promise of retribution against Lenka fueled her resolve, propelling her towards the precipice of forbidden knowledge and arcane power. "Know this," Agafia cautioned, her voice a whisper that carried the weight of prophecy. "Every drop of this elixir demands a toll. It will amplify your desires, magnify your will, but at a cost that must be paid." Her wrinkled fingers traced patterns in the air, as if inscribing unseen runes that shimmered briefly before fading into the ether. Slaviana nodded solemnly, her heart heavy with the burden of what lay ahead. The ancient woman's words resonated deep within her, stirring echoes of caution and curiosity that warred within her soul. She knew that crossing this threshold meant forfeiting the safety of ignorance, venturing into realms where mortals were mere pawns in a game played by unseen hands. "And the conditions," Agafia continued, her voice now tinged with a hint of urgency. "You must speak your intent clearly, without doubt or hesitation. The spirits that heed our call are unforgiving of ambiguity, responding only to the clarity of purpose." A chill crept up Slaviana's spine as she absorbed the weight of Agafia's words. The boundaries between the natural and supernatural blurred in the dimly lit room, where ancient knowledge danced on the fringes of comprehension. She understood that once spoken, her words would resonate through realms unseen, setting in motion forces beyond her control. With a steadying breath, Slaviana reached out for the vial, feeling its coolness against her fingertips. She closed her eyes briefly, summoning the resolve that had brought her to this pivotal moment. The memory of betrayal fueled her determination, casting aside the shadows of doubt that threatened to consume her. Agafia watched silently as Slaviana uncorked the vial, the air thickening with the scent of herbs and arcane potential. The ancient crone's gaze held a mixture of compassion and detachment, a silent witness to the unfolding of destiny in the hands of the determined seeker before her. "The ritual begins," Agafia declared, her voice carrying the weight of ancient rites and timeless truths. "Speak your intent, child, and let the forces know your will." Slaviana took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly as she uttered the words that would bind her fate to the unseen currents of magic. The room seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, as if the very fabric of reality awaited her command, a command that would echo through the ages, marking a journey into the heart of darkness and the promise of vengeance. As the conversation with Agafia unfolded, the air in the dimly lit room grew heavy with portentous words and the musty scent of ancient herbs. Slaviana sat opposite the old crone, her eyes fixed on Agafia's weathered face as she spoke with a conviction that sent shivers down her spine. "Child," Agafia began, her voice low and gravelly, "the child of Lenka carries a darkness within, a shadow that will grow with each passing moon. The path ahead is fraught with peril, and those who cross it shall bear the burden of their choices." Slaviana's heart quickened at the dire prophecy, the weight of Agafia's words settling like a leaden shroud over her thoughts. The old woman's eyes bore into hers with a piercing intensity, as if peering into the depths of her soul and uncovering truths best left buried. "She has invoked powers beyond her understanding," Agafia continued, her tone carrying a blend of sorrow and resolve. "The spirits whisper of a fate intertwined with darkness, where innocence is but a fleeting illusion." Slaviana's hands clenched into fists at her sides, the desire for retribution burning brighter within her. Agafia's words stoked the flames of vengeance, offering a tantalizing promise of justice amidst the tangled web of betrayal and anguish. "And what of justice?" Slaviana questioned, her voice tinged with a mix of desperation and determination. "Will the spirits heed my call for retribution?" Agafia's gaze softened momentarily, a flicker of empathy crossing her weathered features. "Justice is a blade with two edges, child," she replied cryptically. "To wield it is to invite its wrath upon the bearer. Yet, if your heart is set on this path, know that the price may exceed the payment." A chill swept through Slaviana as she contemplated Agafia's words. The boundaries between right and wrong blurred in the face of her consuming need for vindication. She could almost taste the bitterness of betrayal on her tongue, a bitter reminder of the love lost and the trust shattered. "I am prepared," Slaviana declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within. "Whatever the cost, I will see justice served." Agafia nodded solemnly, the weight of their shared resolve settling like a shroud over the room. "Then let the ritual commence," she intoned, her voice carrying the weight of ancient vows and unspoken oaths. May the spirits hear your plea and grant you the strength to walk this path." With a final nod, Slaviana reached for the vial of potent elixir, its contents shimmering with a malevolent glow. The decision was made, the die cast. In that moment, amidst the flickering candlelight and the oppressive silence, Slaviana embraced the darkness that awaited her, a darkness that promised both redemption and damnation in equal measure. Slaviana stood at the precipice of her own turmoil, grappling with the swirling tempest of emotions that threatened to consume her. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the room, mirroring the uncertainty that clouded her mind. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination, each beat a reminder of the weight of her decision. Images of betrayal and love intertwined in her thoughts, a tapestry of memories woven with threads of anguish and longing. The faces of Igor and Lenka flickered before her eyes, their smiles now twisted into mocking sneers in her mind's eye. The pain of their betrayal gnawed at her soul, but amidst the anguish, a flicker of resolve burned bright. She had come too far to turn back now. The old crone's words echoed in her ears, a haunting melody that spoke of sacrifice and retribution. Agaphia's prophecy had laid bare the path ahead, revealing the steep price that awaited those who dared to challenge fate itself. Slaviana's fingers tightened around the vial of elixir, its contents shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It was a potion of forbidden power, whispered of, in hushed tones among those who dabbled in the darker arts. Its potency promised both salvation and damnation, a double-edged sword that could cut through the veil of deceit that shrouded her world. A voice within her whispered of caution, urging her to reconsider. What price would she pay for vengeance? Was the cost worth the fleeting satisfaction of seeing Lenka's downfall? Yet, another voice, the voice of wounded pride and unyielding determination, drowned out the whispers of doubt. With a steely resolve, Slaviana met Agaphia's gaze once more. The old crone's eyes held a depth of wisdom born from centuries of whispered secrets and silent regrets. There was no turning back now. The die had been cast, and Slaviana had chosen her path. "Let the ritual begin," she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within. The words hung heavy in the air, a solemn vow spoken in defiance of fate itself. Agafia nodded solemnly, acknowledging the weight of Slaviana's decision. "May the spirits heed your call," she murmured, her voice a whispered benediction that echoed through the dimly lit room. As the ritual commenced, Slaviana felt a surge of power coursing through her veins, a mingling of fear and exhilaration that set her pulse racing. She closed her eyes and surrendered herself to the currents of magic that enveloped her, trusting in Agaphia's guidance and the promise of justice that awaited her at the journey's end. In that moment, amidst the flickering candlelight and the oppressive silence, Slaviana embraced her destiny, a destiny forged in the crucible of inner conflict and tempered by the fires of determination. The darkness awaited her, but so too did the faint glimmer of redemption that beckoned from beyond the shadows. Slaviana stood before the small, unmarked grave, clutching the vial of elixir tightly in her trembling hand. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting an ethereal glow over the desolate cemetery. The air was thick with an ominous stillness, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves stirred by the gentle breeze. The grave before her was a solemn reminder of the path she had chosen, a path fraught with darkness and uncertainty. The earth beneath her feet felt cold and unyielding, a stark contrast to the warmth that had once filled her heart. She could still hear Agaphia's whispered warnings echoing in her mind, a haunting refrain that spoke of consequences yet to unfold. With a deep breath, Slaviana knelt down and began the ritual she had sworn to complete. She carefully poured the contents of the vial onto the freshly turned soil, watching as it seeped into the earth like a malevolent whisper. The elixir glowed faintly in the moonlight, its arcane power shimmering with an unsettling intensity. Next, she placed the delicate blue ribbon, a token of Lenka's innocence and unwitting involvement, beside the grave. It fluttered gently in the night breeze, a silent testament to the price paid for vengeance. As she stood there, a wave of guilt washed over Slaviana, mingling with an unfamiliar fear that clawed at the edges of her resolve. Had she gone too far? Was there still a chance to turn back, to undo the dark forces she had unleashed? The questions lingered in the silence, unanswered and unsettling. Yet, despite the turmoil within her, Slaviana knew that the ritual was irreversible, a pact sealed in blood and regret. With a final, lingering gaze at the makeshift grave, Slaviana turned away, her steps heavy with the weight of her actions. The night closed around her like a shroud, enveloping her in its cool embrace as she walked away from the burial ground, haunted by the specter of her choices. The journey home was a solitary one, each footfall a reminder of the divide between the world she had known and the shadowed realm into which she had ventured. The elixir's magic pulsed faintly in her veins, a constant reminder of the price she had paid for justice, a justice tempered by guilt and an uncertain future. As Slaviana disappeared into the darkness, the cemetery remained silent and still, a testament to the rituals of the past and the shadows that lingered within. The moon cast its pale light over the unmarked grave, where the earth and the ribbon lay undisturbed, a solemn tribute to the tangled web of fate and consequence that bound them all. After returning home, Slaviana concealed the vial of elixir beneath her pillow, shielding it from prying eyes and the unsettling presence it exuded. The weight of her actions pressed heavily upon her as she navigated the days that followed. She found herself in the solemn company of Lenka's grieving parents, their sorrow palpable and their hearts heavy with the unjust loss of their daughter. Slaviana, burdened by guilt yet resolved in her purpose, offered what comfort she could muster, her words tinged with a bitter knowledge of the role she had played in their tragedy. The days blurred together in a haze of remorse and restless nights. The elixir's lingering magic whispered softly to Slaviana in the quiet moments, a constant reminder of the irreversible path she had chosen. Its presence beneath her pillow seemed to weigh upon her dreams, weaving visions of shadows and whispered regrets. Yet, amidst the turmoil of her own conscience, Slaviana remained steadfast in her determination. She bore the weight of her actions as a penance, a solitary vigil against the backdrop of a world forever altered by her choices. Each passing day etched deeper lines of sorrow upon her face, a testament to the toll exacted by her pursuit of justice through dark and desperate means. In the quiet of her room, she often found herself staring at the ceiling, grappling with the unseen forces that now seemed to coil around her like tendrils of mist. The elixir, hidden away but never forgotten, pulsed with a subtle energy that seemed to seep into the fabric of her existence, a haunting reminder of the boundaries she had crossed. As time trickled by, Slaviana's interactions with Lenka's parents became less frequent, their grief mingling with an unspoken understanding of the shadow that loomed between them. Each glance exchanged held a world of unsaid words, a mutual acknowledgement of the tangled web of fate that had ensnared them all. And so Slaviana lived in the aftermath of the ritual, a life shaped by choices made in the name of justice, tempered by the harsh reality of loss and remorse. The elixir beneath her pillow remained a silent sentinel, a relic of a night steeped in darkness and the uncertain future it had wrought. In the bustling marketplace, Slaviana navigated through the stalls with a heavy heart, her presence a magnet for sympathetic whispers and curious glances. The local villagers, normally busy with their daily transactions, now turned their attention to her, their faces etched with concern and compassion. As she passed by a group of elderly women selling fruits and herbs, their hushed tones swirled around her like the autumn wind, carrying stories of Lenka's kindness and the tragedy that had befallen her. Slaviana caught fragments of their conversations as she feigned interest in a basket of apples, the villagers unaware of her inner turmoil. "Poor Slaviana," one of the women murmured, her wrinkled hands sorting through a pile of oranges. "Did you hear about what happened?" Another nodded solemnly, her eyes fixed on Slaviana's distant gaze. "Yes, it's a terrible thing. They say she's never been the same since that night." Slaviana pretended not to hear, her fingers tracing the rough texture of a pear. The weight of their pity hung heavy in the air, mingling with the guilt that gnawed at her insides. She felt their eyes on her, their sympathy a silent accusation against the backdrop of her secret burden. A middle-aged man selling handmade pottery paused his sales pitch, offering Slaviana a sympathetic smile. "You know, if there's anything we can do." She managed a faint nod, her voice caught in her throat. The marketplace continued to bustle around her. the vendors' voices blending into a cacophony of mundane chatter that echoed hollowly in her ears. Yet amidst the well-meaning gestures and murmured condolences, Slaviana found herself increasingly isolated. Each encounter served as a reminder of the invisible divide between her and the villagers, a divide forged by the choices she had made in the darkness of Agaphia's abode. As she finally made her way home, the weight of the villagers' compassion lingered like an unshakable shadow. Their attempts at comfort, however genuine, only underscored the stark reality of her solitary path, a path defined by the lingering echo of magic and the price paid in the pursuit of justice, no matter how dark and desperate. Slaviana found herself at a crossroads of emotions when she encountered her former teacher, Ms. Petrova, on a quiet afternoon in the heart of the village. The encounter, though brief, carried with it a weight of judgment and sympathy that unsettled Slaviana to her core. Ms. Petrova, with her silver-streaked hair pulled back into a tight bun and spectacles perched on the bridge of her nose, approached Slaviana with a mixture of concern and reproach. Her voice, once a steady guide through Slaviana's formative years, now carried a tone edged with disappointment. "Oh, Slaviana Ms." Petrova began, her expression a blend of empathy and disapproval. "I've heard what happened. It's tragic, truly, but I can't help but wonder." Slaviana's heart sank as she braced herself for the inevitable critique, her eyes downcast as she struggled to meet Ms. Petrova's gaze. The teacher's words, though measured, struck deep, resonating with a clarity that cut through the haze of sympathy surrounding her. "You were always such a bright student, full of potential, Ms." Petrova continued, her voice tinged with regret. "But this rashness, this disregard for others' well-being, it's not like you, Slaviana. What happened to the girl who used to light up the classroom with her compassion?" Slaviana's jaw tightened as she fought against the surge of defensiveness rising within her. She knew Ms. Petrova's words held truth, a truth she struggled to reconcile with the desperation that had driven her to Agaphia's door. The teacher's disappointment cut deeper than any of the villagers' sympathetic murmurs, exposing the fractures in Slaviana's resolve. "Ms. Petrova," Slaviana began, her voice wavering under the weight of guilt and self-doubt. She searched for words to explain, to justify her actions in the face of such scrutiny. But Ms. Petrova's gaze softened, her expression clouded with a mixture of pity and resignation. "I hope you find your way back, Slaviana," she said quietly, a plea as much as a farewell. "Remember who you are." With those words hanging in the air, Ms. Petrova turned away, leaving Slaviana to grapple with the echoes of their conversation. As she watched her former teacher disappear into the flow of the village life, Slaviana felt the weight of moral judgment settle upon her shoulders. She stood alone in the fading light, grappling not just with the consequences of her actions, but with the stark realization of the person she had become in her quest for vengeance, a person marked by darkness and a haunting absence of empathy, a stark contrast to the bright promise Ms. Petrova had once seen in her. In that moment, amidst the quiet condemnation and whispered sympathies of the village, Slaviana found herself adrift in a sea of moral ambiguity, grappling with the harsh reality that her choices had not only changed her fate, but had left an indelible mark on the fabric of her community, a mark that would linger long after the echoes of Agaphia's magic had faded into the depths of memory. Slaviana sat alone in her small, dimly lit room, her thoughts swirling like a tempestuous sea. The events of the past weeks weighed heavily on her, casting long shadows across her once clear conscience. She traced the faint outline of her swollen belly, a tangible reminder of both the life within her and the choices that had led her down this dark path. "I never imagined it would come to this," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible against the silence that enveloped her. Her fingers trembled as they brushed over the pendant that hung around her neck, a gift from Igor, now a bitter reminder of his betrayal. The village's whispers haunted her, their murmurs blending with the distant echoes of Agaphia's warnings. Slaviana had sought justice, or perhaps revenge, driven by a primal need to reclaim what she had lost. Yet, as she felt the life stirring within her, doubts gnawed at her resolve. Was this darkness, this illness that had crept into her soul, the price she had unwittingly paid? Her gaze fell upon the herbs and potions Agaphia had given her, their presence a stark reminder of the pact she had made. The room seemed to close in around her, suffocating in its familiarity yet foreign in its newfound bleakness. She struggled to reconcile the woman she had become with the girl who had once dreamed of a simple life with Igor before jealousy and suspicion had tainted their love. "What have I done?" Slaviana's voice cracked, the weight of her actions crashing down upon her. Her thoughts turned to the child growing within her, a beacon of innocence amidst the shadows that threatened to engulf her. "Will you bear the burden of my sins?" she murmured, her words a desperate plea to a future she could no longer predict. The flickering candle cast dancing shadows on the walls, mirroring the uncertainty that flickered within Slaviana's heart. She closed her eyes, willing herself to find solace in the rhythmic cadence of her breath. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm raged, a tempest of guilt, doubt, and fear that threatened to consume her. "I must protect you," Slaviana whispered, her hands instinctively cradling her belly, "even if it means facing the consequences of my choices." In the stillness of that solitary moment, Slaviana wrestled with the fragments of her fractured soul, seeking redemption amidst the darkness that had enveloped her. Her journey was far from over, and as the night stretched on, she knew that the dawn would bring not just the promise of a new day, but the weight of decisions that would shape her destiny and that of her unborn child. Slavka's world shattered with the news of little Misha's untimely death. The village mourned the loss of the healthy infant, his life snuffed out in a cruel twist of fate that sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community. Slavka, normally composed and stoic, found herself unraveling at the seams as the weight of guilt and sorrow pressed down upon her heart. She had stumbled upon the news accidentally, overhearing hushed conversations in the market square. Faces once familiar now wore masks of grief and disbelief, their voices trembling with disbelief. The tragic irony cut deep. Misha had been healthy, vibrant, a testament to life's fragile beauty. Yet, despite her proximity to the child's family, Slavka felt a profound sense of powerlessness, a gnawing regret that she had failed to prevent the unthinkable. "I should have known," Slavka whispered to herself in the solitude of her modest home. Her hands trembled as she clasped them tightly together, seeking solace in the memories of Misha's infectious laughter and curious eyes. How could I have missed the signs? Guilt gnawed at her conscience, a relentless predator that stalked the corridors of her mind. She replayed the moments leading up to Misha's passing, searching for clues she might have overlooked, signs that could have foretold the tragedy. Each memory stung with the bitter sting of regret, each realization a dagger to her already fragile resolve. The villagers' murmurs became a haunting refrain, their accusatory glances weighing heavily upon her soul. Slavka's once steadfast demeanor faltered, replaced by a raw vulnerability that exposed her inner turmoil to the world. She withdrew into herself, seeking solace in the dim flicker of a solitary candle, its feeble light a feeble attempt to ward off the encroaching darkness. "What have I become?" Slavka's voice cracked with anguish, the echoes reverberating off the walls of her now suffocating home. The guilt that had once been a distant shadow now loomed large, casting a pall over her every thought and action. "I failed him," she whispered, tears mingling with the ashes of shattered dreams. In the silence of that somber night, Slavka grappled with the harsh reality of her own limitations. She had always prided herself on her vigilance, her ability to protect those she held dear. Now, faced with the cruel irony of Misha's fate, she struggled to reconcile her perceived failure with the harsh truths of mortality. The morning dawned gray and somber, casting long shadows across the village that mirrored the darkness in Slavka's heart. As she navigated the mournful streets, the weight of her guilt bore down upon her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Faces once warm and familiar now regarded her with a mix of pity and suspicion, their unspoken questions a silent indictment of her perceived negligence. "I will never forgive myself," Slavka vowed, her voice a solemn oath to the memory of the child she had failed to save. Yet amidst the grief and self-recrimination, a flicker of determination ignited within her resolve to honor Misha's memory by seeking redemption, however elusive it might seem. And so, as the village mourned and life carried on with its relentless march, Slavka embarked on a journey of introspection and reckoning, a journey haunted by the echoes of a tragedy that had forever altered the course of her life. In the village, Whispers slithered through the cobblestone streets like tendrils of fog, weaving tales of sinister forces at play behind young Misha's tragic death. The air, once filled with the scent of baking bread and laughter, now carried an undercurrent of unease and suspicion. Faces that had once greeted each other warmly now cast furtive glances and exchanged hushed murmurs, their voices laden with fear and uncertainty. "It wasn't natural," old Babushka whispered to her cronies gathered at the market square, her voice a mix of dread and conviction. "No child should perish like that, not without foul play." The notion of supernatural interference took root swiftly, fueled by the collective grief and bewilderment that gripped the community. The men at the tavern discussed omens and curses over tankards of bitter ale, their words punctuated by nervous laughter that failed to mask their underlying anxiety. Even the typically pragmatic women, gathered at the communal well, traded stories of eerie occurrences and inexplicable happenings with solemn nods and worried glances. "I heard strange sounds the night before," confessed one young mother, her eyes darting nervously around, as if expecting unseen eyes to be watching, like someone chanting in a language I couldn't understand. The village priest, a stalwart figure of faith and reason, struggled to quell the rising tide of superstition. His sermons, once a beacon of hope and solace, now echoed with undertones of caution and vigilance against succumbing to fear and conjecture. Yet even he could not dismiss the unsettling aura that permeated the village, a palpable sense that unseen forces lurked in the shadows, orchestrating events beyond mortal comprehension. As days turned into weeks, suspicion took hold like ivy creeping up the ancient stone walls. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle of leaves in the wind became a portent of impending doom. Mothers clutched their children tighter, fathers eyed strangers with newfound wariness, and the once vibrant marketplace fell under a pall of collective dread. "It's the work of witches," declared Grigori, the blacksmith known for his gruff demeanor and ironclad skepticism. His words, though dismissed by some as the rantings of a man haunted by grief, resonated with those who sought solace in assigning blame to forces beyond their control. And amidst the somber discussions and fearful whispers, Slavka found herself drawn into the web of suspicion that gripped her beloved village. Her heart ached with guilt and regret, her thoughts consumed by the haunting possibility that her actions or lack thereof had unwittingly invited malevolent forces into their midst. "I should have known," she murmured to herself as she wandered the deserted streets at twilight, shadows lengthening around her like accusing fingers. "I should have protected him." But amidst the darkness that threatened to swallow the village whole, a flicker of defiance ignited within Slavka, a determination to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. For if Misha's death was indeed the work of darker forces, then she would face them head-on, armed with the resolve born from grief and the desperate need for redemption. And so, as the moon cast its silvery glow over the village, Slavka embarked on a journey fraught with peril and uncertainty, a journey that would test not only her courage, but the very fabric of her beliefs in a world where shadows held secrets and fear lurked in every whisper. Slavka stood at the precipice of her choices, grappling with the aftermath of consuming the potion she had obtained under the cloak of night. The air around her seemed heavier, pregnant with the weight of her moral dilemmas and the unsettling consequences that now loomed ominously in her mind. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over her secluded cottage, Slavka's thoughts churned like the restless sea during a storm. The potion, brewed with whispered promises of justice and retribution, had tasted bitter on her tongue, leaving an acrid trail of regret and uncertainty in its wake. Gazing into the flickering firelight, she replayed the events leading to this pivotal moment. The clandestine meetings with shadowy figures, the whispered incantations that had bound her fate to a path of darkness, all now haunted her waking hours like specters in the mist. "I did it for Misha," she murmured to herself, her voice barely audible against the crackling of the fire, "to right the wrongs that fate had dealt him." But beneath the veneer of righteous intent lay a tumultuous sea of doubt. Had she truly acted out of love and justice, or had she succumbed to the seductive lure of revenge, a poison more insidious than any potion? The faces of her neighbors, their murmurs of suspicion and fear, now etched themselves into her conscience, accusing her of trespassing into realms better left untouched. Her hands trembled as she traced the contours of the potion vial resting on the wooden table, its contents shimmering in the firelight like liquid shadows. The choice she had made, driven by desperation and grief, now cast a long shadow over her once clear conscience. "I only wanted to protect," she whispered, her voice a fragile echo in the silence of the night. Outside, the wind moaned mournfully through the leafless branches, carrying with it an unsettling chill that seemed to seep into her very bones. Slavka's heart, heavy with the burden of her actions, yearned for absolution, a reprieve from the relentless turmoil that now threatened to engulf her soul. In the flickering dance of firelight and shadows, she found herself at a crossroads of fate and consequence. Would she continue down the path she had chosen, driven by the promise of justice, but shadowed by the specter of moral compromise? Or would she find the strength to confront her inner demons, to seek redemption amidst the darkness that threatened to consume her? As the night wore on, Slavka's resolve hardened like tempered steel. With each passing hour, she wrestled with her inner turmoil, seeking clarity amidst the murky depths of her conflicted heart. For in the heart of every darkness, she knew, there flickered a spark of light, a beacon of hope that whispered of forgiveness and renewal. And so, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, Slavka stood resolute, ready to face the consequences of her choices. With a silent prayer on her lips, she vowed to navigate the treacherous waters of her own making, guided by the flickering flame of courage that burned within her. For in the realm of shadows and uncertainty, where morality and desire intertwined, Slavka knew that the true test of her strength lay not in the potion she had consumed, but in the choices she would make in its wake. In the dead of night, Slavka's world shattered with a sudden, terrifying encounter. She had ventured into the moonlit streets, driven by an urgent need that clawed at her insides. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Approaching Lenka's house, a place now fraught with tension and bitter memories, Slavka's heart raced in anticipation and fear. She approached the window, her breath catching in her throat as she glimpsed a shadowy figure moving within. Just as she leaned closer to peer through the glass, a chilling sensation crept over her, a presence so palpable, it seemed to wrap around her like a suffocating cloak. And then it happened. A grotesque creature, neither human nor beast, emerged from the darkness, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. Slavka's scream tore through the night, reverberating off the walls as she stumbled backward, her pulse pounding in her ears. She felt a searing pain rip through her shoulder, followed by a cold, sticky wetness spreading across her clothes. In a blind panic, Slavka fled, her mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. The creature's haunting visage lingered in her mind's eye, its twisted form etched into her memory like a grotesque painting. She stumbled through the labyrinthine streets, each corner a potential hiding place for unseen horrors. Finally, as dawn broke on the horizon, Slavka collapsed at the doorstep of her own home, gasping for breath, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She dared not look at the dark stain that marked her clothing, a grim reminder of the night's horrors. Inside, she peeled off her sodden garments, revealing a deep gash on her shoulder where the creature's claws had torn through flesh. The wound burned with an unnatural heat, and she could still feel the phantom touch of the creature's icy grasp. Fighting against waves of nausea and despair, Slavka washed away the sticky residue that clung to her skin, a strange liquid that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her mind raced with questions. What had attacked her? Was it a manifestation of her own guilt and fear, or something far more sinister? As she wrapped herself in a blanket, seeking solace in the warmth of her bed, Slavka's thoughts spiraled into a maelstrom of dread. The events of the night had left her shaken to the core, questioning the boundaries between reality and nightmare. And amidst it all, one chilling certainty remained: she was now entangled in a web of darkness, where every shadow held unseen dangers and every whisper carried the echo of impending doom. With the first light of morning filtering through her window, Slavka lay awake, haunted by the night's horrors. The creature's malevolent gaze lingered in her mind, a stark reminder that in the realm of fear and uncertainty, the line between reality and nightmare could blur with devastating consequences. As the days passed, the simmering tensions within Lenka's household began to boil over, casting a grim shadow over the tranquil village. Slavka, haunted by recent events and driven by an uneasy curiosity, found herself drawn into the heart of the family's unraveling drama. Lenka's home, once a picture of domestic harmony, now echoed with the strained voices of despair and accusation. The air hung heavy with unspoken grievances and the palpable weight of tragedy. Slavka cautiously approached the dwelling, her heart heavy with empathy, yet apprehensive of what she might uncover. Inside, she was met with a scene that seared into her memory, a tableau of grief and anguish etched upon every face. Lenka lay motionless upon a makeshift bed, her once vibrant spirit now dimmed by the cruel hand of fate. The room was suffused with a sorrowful silence broken only by the stifled sobs of family members gathered around her. Slavka's eyes fell upon Lenka's frail form, now a testament to the horrors she had endured. Her body bore the harrowing marks of trauma, bruises like storm clouds upon her skin, each one a testament to the brutality she had suffered. A shiver ran down Slavka's spine as she took in the sight, her breath catching in her throat at the stark reality before her. The villagers whispered in hushed tones, their words laden with sympathy and indignation. They spoke of the unspeakable details of Lenka's injuries, each revelation stirring a potent mix of disbelief and righteous anger among the community. How could such darkness infiltrate their peaceful enclave? Who could perpetrate such unspeakable acts against one of their own? Slavka's heart swelled with a torrent of emotions: compassion for Lenka's suffering, rage at the injustice inflicted upon her, and a profound sense of vulnerability that now tainted their once idyllic village. She found herself at the nexus of a community grappling with loss and betrayal, where bonds of trust strained against the weight of suspicion and fear. In the days that followed, Slavka became a silent witness to the upheaval that gripped the village. She saw how the tragedy had torn at the fabric of families, how it had shattered illusions of safety and invulnerability. And through it all, she could not shake the haunting image of Lenka's broken body, a stark reminder of the fragility of human resilience in the face of malevolence. As the sun set over the horizon, casting long shadows upon the village, Slavka retreated to her own home, haunted by the specter of what had transpired. The darkness seemed to press in around her, whispering secrets of a world where innocence could be shattered in an instant, leaving only fractured lives and unanswered questions in its wake. In Lenka's household, a storm of family secrets and agonizing suffering erupted amidst the veil of a mysterious illness. Slavka, drawn into the heart of this turmoil, found herself grappling with profound moral and emotional conflicts, each moment fraught with uncertainty and regret. The once cozy rooms of Lenka's home now echoed with whispered fears and frantic attempts to comprehend the inexplicable. Family members, once united by love and shared dreams, now stood divided by suspicion and helplessness. The illness that gripped Lenka defied diagnosis, its origins shrouded in ominous silence that only deepened their despair. Slavka, burdened by her own demons and the weight of her actions, felt the sharp sting of guilt piercing her resolve. The potion she had sought from Agafia, driven by a thirst for vengeance, now haunted her waking thoughts and tormented her dreams. What had she unleashed upon herself and those she cared about? Would her quest for justice lead only to greater suffering? As the days wore on, the atmosphere in the village grew increasingly tense. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves caught in a bitter wind, carrying tales of curses and dark forces at play. Slavka found herself at the center of these whispers, her presence a reminder of the thin line between hope and despair, courage and cowardice. Within her own soul, a tempest raged, a tumultuous blend of regret and defiance, compassion and fury. She questioned the morality of her actions, the righteousness of her cause, and the price exacted by her pursuit of retribution. Could she justify the pain she had caused in the name of justice, or had she become the very monster she sought to vanquish? Amidst the chaos, Lenka's condition worsened, each passing day marked by new revelations of suffering and loss. The once vibrant woman now lay pallid and frail, her spirit flickering like a candle in a gusty night. Slavka watched helplessly as the family's unity unraveled, torn apart by fear and suspicion. Yet amid the darkness, moments of fragile humanity emerged. Neighbors offered solace and support, their gestures of kindness a beacon of hope in the gathering storm. Slavka, torn between remorse and determination, sought redemption in the small acts of compassion she could offer, silently praying for forgiveness and understanding. As the village grappled with its collective anguish, Slavka retreated into solitude, wrestling with the ghosts of her choices and the shadows of her doubts. The path she had chosen, once clear and righteous, now seemed clouded with uncertainty and regret. And in the quiet of her own heart, she wondered if she could ever atone for the suffering she had unleashed upon Lenka's family and her own soul. In the quiet corners of the village, whispers of malevolent forces intertwined with the events surrounding Lenka, casting a pall of mistrust and fear over the local residents. Rumors spread like wildfire, weaving tales of curses and ancient evils lurking in the shadows, unseen yet palpable in their effect on the community. The once tight-knit fabric of village life began to unravel as suspicion took root. Neighbors eyed each other warily, their usual camaraderie tainted by doubt and apprehension. Every creaking floorboard, every gust of wind rattling the shutters, fueled imaginations with visions of unseen hands and sinister whispers. Amidst this backdrop of uncertainty, Slavka found herself caught in a symbolic conflict between light and darkness, good and evil. Her dreams became battlegrounds of metaphorical landscapes, charred gardens symbolizing the desolation of her soul, where once lush flora now lay in ruin under an ominous sky. In these nocturnal visions, she confronted her inner demons and the consequences of her choices. Shadows danced menacingly around her, morphing into grotesque shapes that mirrored her doubts and fears. The air thickened with a sense of impending doom, leaving Slavka to navigate through a labyrinth of guilt and regret. The village itself seemed to breathe with a life of its own, its ancient stones whispering tales of forgotten tragedies and unspeakable deeds. Every cobblestone path, every gnarled tree harbored secrets of generations past, their echoes reverberating through the present turmoil. As tensions mounted, even the most rational minds succumbed to superstition and suspicion. Strange phenomena, flickering lights, eerie sounds were attributed to the wrath of restless spirits or the malevolent influence of dark forces lurking beneath the surface. Each night brought new tales of spectral apparitions and unexplained occurrences, further blurring the line between reality and nightmare. In the midst of this maelstrom, Slavka stood as both witness and participant in the unfolding drama. Her role in Lenka's tragedy weighed heavily upon her, her actions and intentions now tangled in a web of symbolism and supernatural conjecture. As the village grappled with its demons, both real and imagined, Slavka found herself confronting the darker corners of her own soul, unsure if she could emerge unscathed from the shadows that threatened to engulf them all. Slavka found herself ensnared in a web of unsettling dreams, where Lenka and the darkness intertwined in unnatural atmospheres that mirrored their inner conflicts and fears. These dreams were not mere fleeting illusions of the night, they carried weight, each scene etched with symbols of looming doom and twisted reflections of reality. In one haunting vision, Slavka wandered through a mist-shrouded forest where shadows whispered secrets of betrayal and revenge. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant echo of mocking laughter. Through the fog, she glimpsed Lenka's figure, distorted and ethereal, dancing at the edge of her vision like a phantom. As Slavka approached, the forest seemed to close in around her, branches twisting into gnarled claws that grasped at her sanity. Lenka's presence grew stronger, her gaze filled with accusation and scorn. In this dream realm, Slavka felt stripped of her defenses, exposed to the raw edges of her guilt and desperation. Each encounter with Lenka in these dreams became a confrontation steeped in symbolic dread. The setting shifted unpredictably from desolate landscapes under moonlit skies to labyrinthine corridors that echoed with the whispers of lost souls. Lenka's voice, dripping with malice, echoed through these surreal landscapes, taunting Slavka with her failures and deriding her futile attempts to alter her fate. In another chilling dream sequence, Slavka found herself in a dilapidated mansion engulfed in perpetual twilight. The walls dripped with shadows, and every corner harbored unseen threats. Lenka stood at the grand staircase, a spectral figure bathed in an eerie glow, her presence filling the space with a palpable sense of menace. She accused Slavka of meddling in forces beyond her control, of inviting darkness into their lives with reckless abandon. Throughout these nightmarish encounters, the line between reality and illusion blurred, leaving Slavka grappling with the unsettling notion that perhaps her own actions had unleashed forces far more sinister than she could comprehend. The dreamscape became a stage for her inner turmoil, where guilt and remorse intertwined with a primal fear of the unknown. As Slavka awakened each morning, drenched in cold sweat and haunted by the echoes of these spectral confrontations, she carried with her the weight of impending doom. The dreams had become a relentless reminder of her entanglement in a web of mystical forces and personal vendettas, pushing her deeper into a labyrinth of fear and self-doubt. In the midst of swirling familial tensions and whispered accusations, Slavka found herself entangled in a web of mysteries and conflicts that threatened to tear her family apart. The once cozy atmosphere of their home now crackled with distrust and unease, each conversation veering dangerously close to the topic of mystical occurrences that defied rational explanation. The rifts between relatives deepened with every passing day, fueled by heated debates over the validity of supernatural claims and the implications of Slavka's alleged involvement. Some family members stood staunchly on the side of skepticism, dismissing tales of dark forces at play as mere superstition. Others, however, clung to their beliefs in unseen powers, pointing accusing fingers at Slavka and casting shadows of doubt over her intentions. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, Slavka embarked on a journey of introspection and self-discovery, grappling with unsettling questions about her own actions and the inexplicable ties binding her to mysterious forces. The lines between reality and fantasy blurred, leaving her questioning the very fabric of her existence and the true nature of the events unfolding around her. Haunted by glimpses of spectral figures in the corners of her vision and plagued by unsettling dreams that blurred the boundaries between nightmare and reality, Slavka's quest for truth became a labyrinthine journey fraught with perilous twists and turns. Each revelation uncovered new layers of complexity, pulling her deeper into a realm where rationality yielded to the whims of the unknown. As she confronted the shadows lurking within her own psyche, Slavka faced a moral crossroads, torn between the urge to unearth the truth and the fear of confronting truths that could shatter her fragile sense of reality. Her quest for self-awareness became a harrowing descent into the darkest recesses of her soul, where doubts and fears festered like festering wounds, threatening to consume her sanity. Through it all, Slavka clung to fragments of certainty, desperately seeking solace in the fragments of truth she could grasp amidst the chaos. Yet, with each revelation came new doubts, each step forward in her search for answers only serving to deepen the labyrinth of mysteries that surrounded her. As the tensions within her family reached a fever pitch, and as the weight of unanswered questions pressed down upon her, Slavka's journey toward self-discovery became a perilous dance on the razor's edge between enlightenment and madness. The search for truth had become a terrifying odyssey through the shadows of the unknown, where every step forward carried her further into the heart of darkness that threatened to consume her world. As the layers of family secrets peeled away, revealing hidden truths and buried betrayals, Slavka found herself thrust into a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. What had once seemed like a stable foundation of familial bonds now cracked under the weight of revelations that blurred the lines between reality and mysticism. In the heart of their ancestral home, shadows danced with whispers of past indiscretions and long-buried grievances. Each revelation tore at the fragile facade of unity, exposing rifts that ran deeper than anyone had dared to acknowledge. Secrets, once tightly guarded, now spilled forth like dark ink staining the purity of their shared history. Amidst the unfolding drama, the village itself seemed to pulse with an otherworldly aura that unsettled Slavka to her core. The familiar paths she had trodden since childhood now twisted beneath a canopy of ancient trees that whispered secrets to the wind. The once friendly faces of neighbors took on sinister undertones, their eyes holding knowing glances that sent shivers down her spine. The countryside, once a haven of tranquility, now loomed as a landscape of dread. The rustling of leaves became an ominous symphony, punctuated by the howls of distant dogs that echoed through the night like mournful cries of warning. Even the moonlight seemed to cast long shadows that danced malevolently across the fields, mocking her unease. As Slavka delved deeper into the labyrinth of her family's past, she unearthed fragments of a history steeped in superstition and fear. Tales of cursed bloodlines and vengeful spirits intertwined with accounts of betrayal and deceit, weaving a tapestry of darkness that threatened to suffocate her with its weight. Haunted by visions that blurred the boundaries between memory and hallucination, Slavka wrestled with a growing sense of paranoia. Was it mere coincidence that strange occurrences seemed to intensify in her presence? Or was there truth to the whispers that accused her of being a catalyst for the unearthly disturbances that plagued the village? Amidst the turmoil, Slavka found herself at odds with her own perceptions, questioning the validity of her experiences while grappling with the undeniable pull of the inexplicable. Reality fractured, giving way to a surreal landscape where the mundane and the supernatural coexisted in uneasy harmony. In the heart of this mystical maelstrom, Slavka struggled to discern friend from foe, truth from deception. Each step she took deeper into the enigma of her family's past brought her closer to a truth that threatened to unravel everything she held dear. As the village braced itself for the culmination of events that blurred the boundaries between the living and the dead, Slavka's journey toward understanding became a harrowing odyssey through the shadows of her own psyche. The mysteries that surrounded her were not merely external threats but reflections of the turmoil within, forcing her to confront the darkest corners of her soul in search of redemption or damnation. Slavka's nights were fraught with visions and unsettling premonitions, foretelling imminent tragedy that gripped her heart with worry for Agafia and her child. Each dream was a mosaic of dark omens, where shadows danced ominously and whispers of impending doom echoed through the depths of her subconscious. The lines between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving her haunted by a sense of impending catastrophe that loomed over her like a shroud. In the waking hours, Slavka's fears were compounded by the chilling atmosphere that pervaded the village. Suspicion and unease hung thick in the air, fueled by the menacing glares of local villagers armed with distrust and, in some cases, weapons. The once familiar faces now bore a veneer of hostility, their eyes holding a silent accusation that sent her into hiding, fearing for her very life. Amidst this palpable tension, Slavka sought solace and guidance from Agafia, whose reputation as a conduit to mystical forces was both revered and feared. The elderly woman's presence exuded an aura of ancient wisdom and connection to the supernatural, confirming the eerie whispers that circulated among the villagers about her mystical abilities. It was in these uncertain times that Agafia beckoned Slavka to undertake a task cloaked in mystery and ritual. Her voice, laden with solemnity, conveyed the weight of an otherworldly mission that defied rational explanation. Against the backdrop of swirling rumors and local legends, Slavka found herself drawn deeper into a web of mysticism that challenged her understanding of reality. As she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of village lore and superstition, Slavka's resolve wavered under the weight of her own doubts and the ominous warnings that surrounded her. The boundaries between the tangible and the supernatural blurred, leaving her torn between skepticism and a growing realization that there were forces at play beyond her comprehension. With each passing day, Slavka's journey into the heart of darkness became a crucible of fear and uncertainty, where ancient prophecies and modern anxieties converged. The whispers of spectral voices and the rustling of unseen entities seemed to follow her every step, heightening her paranoia and testing her sanity in the face of inexplicable phenomena. In this crucible of fear and mysticism, Slavka stood at the crossroads of her fate, torn between the pull of ancestral secrets and the chilling reality of present dangers. Her quest for understanding became a desperate struggle against unseen adversaries and the specter of her own mortality, where every shadow held a potential threat and every whispered legend concealed a truth that could unravel the fabric of her existence. Slavka's inner world was a tumultuous landscape of fear and confusion as she grappled with the unfolding events, forced to make decisions amidst an atmosphere thick with mystical tension and danger. Haunted by the eerie ambience that permeated the village, Slavka found herself increasingly entangled in a web of dark uncertainties. Shadows seemed to dance menacingly around her, whispering secrets of ancient lore and foreboding prophecies that sent shivers down her spine. Every step she took was fraught with the weight of unseen threats and the unsettling presence of whispered voices that echoed in the corridors of her mind. Amidst this atmosphere of palpable dread, Slavka's path converged with the enigmatic figure of Agafia, whose presence cast a long shadow over her psyche. The old woman's influence was as mysterious as it was unnerving, her gaze holding secrets that seemed to pierce through the fabric of reality itself. It was under Agafia's guidance that Slavka embarked on a journey that would test not only her courage but also her understanding of the mystical forces at play. As the tension escalated, Slavka found herself drawn deeper into a labyrinth of symbolism and inexplicable phenomena. Visual images emerged with haunting clarity, the intertwining threads of darkness that coalesced into ominous pillars, reflecting the intricate web of fate that bound her to the unfolding mystery. A black mirror, seemingly a portal to another realm, revealed distorted reflections that mirrored her inner turmoil and the looming presence of unseen entities. In a pivotal moment of desperation and clarity, Slavka confronted the source of her fears head-on. The attic, a place steeped in legend and whispered tales, became the battleground where she waged a visceral struggle for liberation. With each strike against the physical manifestations of Agafia's influence, Slavka sought to reclaim her autonomy and defy the sinister grip of mystic manipulation. The act of destroying the attic became more than a physical confrontation. It symbolized Slavka's quest for liberation from the suffocating grip of fear and mysticism. Each shattered beam and splintered board echoed her defiance against the shadows that had threatened to engulf her sanity and unravel her sense of reality. In the aftermath of her courageous act, Slavka stood amidst the wreckage, breathless yet resolute. The air was thick with the residue of arcane energies and the lingering echoes of ancient whispers. She had crossed a threshold into a realm where symbolism and reality intertwined, where the line between truth and illusion blurred in the flickering light of her newfound understanding. Through the harrowing journey of symbolic imagery and mystical encounters, Slavka emerged transformed, liberated from the spectral chains that had bound her to the enigmatic forces of the village. Her story became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of supernatural adversity, a journey that illuminated the darkest corners of fear and uncertainty with the light of courage and self-discovery. Slavka found herself ensnared in a web of internal conflict, grappling with an intense fear of the malevolent forces that lurked in the shadows. The pervasive sense of dread that permeated the atmosphere around Agafia's dwelling only amplified her unease, painting a chilling portrait that aligned eerily with local legends depicting Agafia as a witch. Inside the witch's abode, darkness seemed to seep from the very walls, enveloping Slavka in a suffocating cloak of foreboding. Every creak of the floorboards and flicker of the candlelight conspired to heighten her senses, casting twisted shadows that danced mockingly along the walls. The air itself carried an otherworldly chill, as if unseen eyes watched her every move with malevolent intent. The local lore whispered tales of Agafia's supernatural prowess, weaving a narrative where her presence alone could bend reality to her will. Slavka, thrust unwillingly into this spectral theater, felt the weight of centuries-old superstitions pressing down upon her, fueling her internal turmoil and feeding her growing sense of isolation and vulnerability. Amidst this surreal backdrop, Slavka's perception of reality underwent a disturbing transformation. She encountered manifestations that defied logic, the sinister threads of darkness that seemed to slither and coil around her limbs like living serpents, and the black mirror that reflected not her physical form, but the twisted visage of her inner fears and doubts. These encounters shook Slavka to her core, leaving her disoriented and unnerved. The once familiar boundaries between reality and myth blurred, leaving her stranded in a twilight realm where the rules of existence seemed arbitrary and mutable. Each encounter with the supernatural left an indelible mark on her psyche, fostering a gnawing sense of dread that threatened to consume her sanity. Yet, amidst the chaos of her inner turmoil and the looming specter of Agafia's malevolence, Slavka found herself compelled to confront her fears head-on. The darkened corners of the witch's domain became a battleground where she waged a silent war against the forces that sought to entrap her. In the end, Slavka's journey through the labyrinthine corridors of fear and uncertainty was not just a quest for survival, but a crucible of self-discovery. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of supernatural adversity, where each step forward carried the weight of courage and the promise of reclaiming her shattered perception of reality. After the harrowing ordeal with Agafia and the supernatural forces that seemed to haunt her, Slavka sought solace by the banks of the river Bolshoi Rodnik, a place known for its tranquil waters and healing properties. The gentle murmur of the river and the rustling of leaves provided a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere she had endured. As she walked along the riverbank, the rhythmic flow of the water seemed to echo the soothing rhythm of her own breath, offering a respite from the tumultuous events that had unfolded. The cool breeze carried the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, filling her senses with a sense of calm she desperately craved. The river Bolshoi Rodnik held a symbolic significance for Slavka, representing not just a physical sanctuary, but also a metaphorical refuge for her fractured spirit. Its crystal-clear waters mirrored the clarity she sought within herself, urging her to confront the inner turmoil that had plagued her since encountering Agafia and the dark mysteries that shrouded the village. Amidst the serenity of nature's embrace, Slavka's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the moral and existential dilemmas that had surfaced in the wake of her supernatural encounters. She pondered the fragility of life and the weight of her own choices, grappling with the unforeseen consequences of meddling with forces beyond her comprehension. It was during this contemplative moment that Slavka's solitude was interrupted by a faint cry emanating from the reeds nearby. Startled, she cautiously approached the source of the sound and discovered a child nestled among the tall grass, motionless and pale, a haunting reminder of a tragedy that had unfolded a year ago when the child drowned. The discovery shook Slavka to her core, reigniting the lingering specters of guilt and uncertainty that had shadowed her since her involvement with Agafia's rituals. The child's presence stirred within her a complex mix of emotions: compassion, sorrow, and a profound sense of responsibility. In that poignant instant by the river, Slavka was faced with an unexpected moral dilemma. Should she reveal the child's presence to the village, reopening old wounds and stirring fresh grief? Or should she honor the child's memory in silence, respecting the delicate balance between the living and the departed? As she stood there, grappling with the weight of her decision, the river continued its gentle murmur, offering no easy answers but providing a space for Slavka to confront her inner demons and reconcile with the unsettling truths that had reshaped her perception of reality. The encounter with the drowned child became a poignant testament to the interconnectedness of life and death, challenging Slavka to find redemption amidst the shadows that lingered in the village's darkened corners. After losing consciousness and encountering mysterious forces beyond her understanding, Slavka found herself abruptly back home, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of domesticity. The caring attention and preparations for her impending childbirth contrasted sharply with the lingering unease and unresolved questions that plagued her mind. Her return to reality was fraught with familial and social conflicts. Concerned whispers among her parents hinted at disapproval and apprehension over Slavka's pregnancy, fearing the judgmental gaze of the rural community. Suggestions were quietly floated about sending her away to live with her sister, a proposal aimed at shielding both Slavka and her unborn child from potential ostracism and gossip. Psychologically, Slavka wrestled with nightly terrors and haunting visions that refused to dissipate with the morning light. Each night brought vivid nightmares that blurred the line between dream and reality, leaving her in a state of perpetual panic and restlessness. The visions seemed to weave a tapestry of dread and uncertainty, each thread pulling her deeper into the abyss of her own fears. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world slumbered under the veil of darkness, Slavka found herself haunted by spectral whispers and phantom touches that chilled her to the bone. Shadows danced at the periphery of her vision, whispering secrets of forgotten rituals and ominous prophecies that stirred primal instincts of survival and protection. The psychological strain bore heavily on Slavka's shoulders, casting a pall over her once hopeful spirit. She sought solace in the mundane tasks of daily life, preparing meals, tending to household chores, but the specter of impending motherhood loomed large, its weight pressing down on her with an intensity that threatened to suffocate. As she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of her mind, Slavka grappled with the duality of her existence, caught between the longing for normalcy and the unsettling truth that she was irrevocably intertwined with forces beyond her comprehension. Each step forward felt like a tentative dance on the precipice of sanity, a delicate balance between resilience and fragility. Yet, amid the turmoil and uncertainty, a flicker of determination burned within Slavka's heart. Despite the psychological torment and societal scrutiny, she harbored an unyielding resolve to protect her child and forge a path forward, no matter the obstacles that loomed on the horizon. In the quiet solitude of her room, As moonlight filtered through the curtains and cast ethereal shadows on the walls, Slavka braced herself for the trials ahead. The night held its secrets close, its whispers an eerie prelude to the challenges that awaited her in the waking world, a world where reality and nightmares intertwined in a chilling dance of survival and redemption. Visions of the icy river and the child stirred within Slavka a moral conflict and an overwhelming fear of the events that lay ahead, entangled with her impending motherhood. The dreams came with an unsettling clarity, each detail etched into her consciousness like frost on a winter morning. In these visions, the river flowed with a chilling serenity, its waters reflecting the moonlight in shimmering ribbons that seemed to beckon her into their depths. Amidst these spectral scenes, Slavka found herself torn between the tranquility of the river's embrace and the visceral fear that gripped her heart. The child, a spectral presence in her dreams, bore the weight of unspoken truths and ominous prophecies that haunted her waking hours. Its cries echoed through the corridors of her mind, a poignant reminder of the fragile life growing within her. Her relationship with her family became a delicate dance of care and concern laced with underlying tension. While her parents expressed genuine worry for her well-being, their apprehension about Slavka's future and that of her unborn child cast a shadow over their interactions. Conversations veered cautiously around the topic, their words weighted with unspoken fears and hesitant hopes. The symbolism of her dreams intertwined seamlessly with the stark reality of her days. Babka Agafaya's spectral figure loomed large, a guardian of ancient secrets and harbinger of unseen dangers. In these nocturnal reveries, Igor's presence flickered like a candle in the wind, sometimes a beacon of solace, other times a harbinger of impending turmoil. Each encounter left Slavka grappling with the boundaries between dream and reality, unsure where one began and the other ended. The icy river, a recurring motif in her dreams, symbolized both renewal and peril. Its pristine surface mirrored the depths of her soul, revealing hidden fears and unresolved conflicts. As she navigated the tumultuous waters of her subconscious, Slavka found herself drawn deeper into the mysteries that lay beneath, each revelation an invitation to confront her deepest anxieties and unearth long-buried truths. Yet, amidst the uncertainty and the haunting visions, Slavka clung to a flicker of hope, a beacon of resilience that burned brightly in the face of adversity. With each passing day, she forged ahead, guided by an inner strength that defied the darkness threatening to engulf her. The dreams persisted, their symbolism weaving a tapestry of introspection and revelation, each thread a testament to her courage and her unwavering resolve to protect the life growing within her. In the quiet hours before dawn, as moonlight bathed the world in silver hues, Slavka found herself standing at the precipice of change. The dreams had become a conduit for her fears and aspirations, a mirror reflecting the complexities of her journey towards motherhood. And amidst the swirling currents of uncertainty, she discovered a newfound clarity, a beacon of hope that illuminated her path forward, despite the shadows that lingered at the edges of her consciousness. Slavka sought solace and understanding in the depths of her nightly visions and encounters, hoping to unravel the tangled threads of her emotions and reach a decision that would bring her inner peace. As the moon cast its ethereal glow over the landscape, she delved deeper into the realms of her subconscious, where dreams intertwined with stark reality. Amidst the turbulent currents of her thoughts, a tragic event shattered the fragile tranquility she sought. Igor, tormented by unseen burdens and engulfed in despair, succumbed to the darkness that had clouded his mind. The shocking act of his suicide, a grisly tableau that echoed through the night, severed the delicate veil between life and death, leaving Slavka and those around her reeling in disbelief and horror. The news of Igor's death spread like wildfire through the close-knit community, igniting a frenzy of whispered conversations and hurried footsteps converging upon Lenka's house. The air crackled with tension as neighbors gathered, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and unease. Questions hung heavy in the air, unanswered and unsettling, as they struggled to comprehend the inexplicable tragedy that had unfolded before them. For Slavka, the impact was profound and deeply personal. The weight of Igor's final, desperate act bore down upon her with crushing force, leaving her grappling with guilt and overwhelming sorrow. In the aftermath of the grim discovery, her own dreams became a haunting echo of the events, each nocturnal vision a reflection of the turmoil that now consumed her. The community, once bound by familiar routines and shared histories, now found itself adrift in a sea of uncertainty and fear. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves in the wind, casting shadows upon once familiar faces and casting doubt upon the very fabric of their lives. As night descended upon the village, Slavka retreated deeper into herself, seeking solace amidst the echoes of loss and the unspoken grief that permeated the air. Yet amidst the darkness, a glimmer of resilience flickered within Slavka's heart. With each passing day, she found herself drawn inexorably towards a path of acceptance and healing, guided by the fragile threads of hope that lingered amidst the wreckage of shattered dreams. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the world slept and stars traced their silent paths across the sky, Slavka confronted the harsh realities of loss and redemption, forging ahead with a newfound determination to confront the shadows that threatened to engulf her. Slavka's psyche trembled under the weight of shock and despair after witnessing the harrowing scenes, confronting the harsh reality of loss and Igor's tragic death. The agony of grief gripped her soul, tightening its hold with each haunting image that flashed through her mind. Amidst the darkness that engulfed her thoughts, symbolism and eerie visions cast a pall over her fragile sanity. Blood, a stark and ominous motif, stained her dreams its presence, a chilling reminder of the bloodshed and suffering that now haunted her existence. In the depths of her nightmares, the haunting smile of the deceased Alenka leered at her, a spectral presence that mocked Slavka's fragile grasp on reality. The sudden appearance of Igor's visage outside her window pierced the veil between the living and the dead, thrusting Slavka deeper into the abyss of fear and uncertainty. Themes of guilt and vengeance gnawed at Slavka's conscience, their tendrils creeping insidiously into her thoughts. She grappled with the unsettling realization that Agafaya's predictions had ominously foretold the tragedies that now unfolded around her. Doubt gnawed at her resolve, stirring waves of anxiety and apprehension about her future. Each revelation, each dark twist of fate, fueled her inner turmoil, leaving her adrift in a tempest of emotions that threatened to consume her. As the village whispered with tales of malevolent forces and unseen hands guiding destinies, Slavka's world unraveled further. The boundaries between truth and superstition blurred, leaving her stranded in a realm where nightmares bled into reality. With each passing moment, she teetered on the precipice of understanding and madness, haunted by the relentless specter of her choices and their dire consequences. Yet amidst the maelstrom of fear and uncertainty, a flicker of resolve stirred within Slavka's heart. With trembling hands and a soul weighed down by remorse, she embarked on a perilous journey towards redemption. The path ahead, fraught with shadows and whispered secrets, beckoned her onward, a reluctant pilgrim in search of absolution amidst the ruins of her shattered innocence. In the quiet of the night, as the moon cast its silvery glow upon the village, Slavka stood at the crossroads of fate. Her heart, heavy with sorrow and burdened by the weight of unspoken truths, yearned for salvation. With each tentative step forward, she confronted the ghosts of her past, determined to unravel the tangled web of fate that ensnared her in its grip. Slavka's descent into emotional and psychological turmoil reached its zenith, pushing her fragile mind to the brink of collapse. Haunted by visions of the deceased Igor, her sanity buckled under the weight of relentless stress and haunting memories, driving her to hysterical laughter and nonsensical cries that echoed through the darkness. In the aftermath of Igor's spectral disappearance, Slavka's parents stumbled upon her in a state of sheer panic, cowering beneath the table. Her eyes, wild with fear, fixated on the phantom image of Igor outside the window, an apparition that dissolved into thin air, leaving her trembling and disoriented. The line between visions and reality blurred ominously, ensnaring Slavka in a web of hallucinations spun from the threads of her fractured psyche. Physically, Slavka's body bore the scars of her inner torment. Once vibrant locks now streaked with premature silver, her pallid complexion spoke of sleepless nights and the relentless grip of trauma. Gaunt and hollow-eyed, she resembled a ghostly reflection of her former self, a poignant metaphor for the anguish that gnawed at her soul and the wounds that festered unseen. As the village whispered of curses and malevolent forces, Slavka's transformation mirrored the darkness that pervaded her world. Each passing day etched deeper lines of despair upon her face, a testament to the harrowing journey she traversed alone. Her once resilient spirit now fractured, she navigated the labyrinth of her own mind, a labyrinth where echoes of past choices and unspoken regrets reverberated with haunting clarity. Amidst the encroaching shadows and the suffocating weight of guilt, Slavka clung to fragments of hope like shards of shattered glass. Her journey through the abyss of her own making had left scars both visible and unseen, yet within the depths of her despair flickered a stubborn resilience, a flicker that refused to be extinguished, even in the face of encroaching darkness. In the eerie stillness of the night, as whispers of ancient legends mingled with the mournful wind, Slavka stood on the precipice of revelation. The truth, shrouded in shadows and half-truths, beckoned her forward, a reluctant pilgrim in search of solace amidst the ruins of her shattered innocence. As Slavka's world teetered on the brink of darkness, her parents became beacons of solace amidst the storm. They enveloped her trembling form in arms that radiated warmth, whispering reassurances and promises of a brighter tomorrow. Their voices, laced with understanding and unwavering support, sought to mend the shattered fragments of her spirit, offering a lifeline in the turbulent sea of her despair. The weight of guilt bore heavily upon Slavka's fragile shoulders, each breath tainted with the haunting specter of what had transpired. Her eyes, once filled with youthful vigor, now reflected a soul burdened by remorse and the gnawing fear of an uncertain future. Yet, amidst the shadows that threatened to engulf her, her parents stood resolute pillars of strength in the face of adversity, urging her to cast aside the chains of culpability that bound her heart. In their tender embrace, Slavka's voice trembled as she confessed her sins, each misstep and misguided action laid bare before those who loved her most. Tears, bitter and unbidden, mingled with words choked by anguish as she sought absolution for the role she believed she played in the unfolding tragedy. Yet her parents' unwavering gaze held no judgment, only unwavering compassion, a lifeline amidst the tempest that threatened to consume her fragile resolve. Amidst the whispers of village folklore and the palpable weight of ancestral sins, Slavka found herself standing at the precipice of childbirth, a moment fraught with both physical agony and the emotional tumult of shattered expectations. Within the dimly lit confines of the birthing chamber, shadows danced upon the walls, casting eerie silhouettes that mirrored the turmoil within her soul. As labor pains racked her body, each contraction a reminder of the impending ordeal, Slavka's heart raced with a mix of dread and desperate hope. Her parents, ever vigilant at her side, offered words of encouragement, their voices a steady anchor amidst the storm. Yet, as the final agonizing push heralded the arrival of new life, dread seeped into Slavka's heart, a chilling premonition realized in the birth of a grotesque creature, its features contorted by an otherworldly malevolence. The air thickened with disbelief and horror as Slavka's cries of anguish echoed through the chamber, mingling with the creature's unearthly wails. Her parents, faces etched with a blend of sorrow and disbelief, recoiled in shock at the monstrous aberration that now lay swaddled in the aftermath of birth, a perversion of nature that defied comprehension. In the aftermath of the harrowing ordeal, as whispers of infernal origins echoed through the village, Slavka clung to her parents' embrace, a sanctuary amidst the chaos that threatened to engulf her shattered world. Their soothing words, though tinged with sorrow, offered a glimmer of solace amidst the abyss of despair, a beacon of hope that flickered faintly in the face of unspeakable horrors. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting its pale light upon a world forever changed, Slavka's gaze lingered upon the newborn abomination that now lay nestled in her arms, a testament to the darkness that lurked within and the unfathomable cost of her choices. With each heartbeat, she braced herself for the daunting journey ahead, a journey fraught with uncertainties and the lingering echoes of a tragedy that had shattered the fragile facade of her innocence. Slavka's childbirth tale unfolds with haunting metaphors that mirror her internal struggles, fears, and psychological turmoil. It transcends the physical realm, delving deep into the murky waters of her subconscious, where the lines between reality and nightmare blur into a chilling narrative of despair and existential dread. As Slavka labors through agonizing contractions, each one a visceral reminder of her impending fate, the birthing chamber becomes a stage for the grotesque theater of her psyche. Shadows dance malevolently on the walls, casting ominous shapes that reflect the turmoil within her soul. The air thickens with palpable tension, suffused with an eerie silence broken only by Slavka's labored breaths, and the distant whispers of ancestral spirits. Her parents, steadfast sentinels in the face of adversity, stand witness to the harrowing ordeal, their faces etched with a blend of concern and trepidation. They offer words of encouragement, their voices a frail shield against the encroaching darkness that threatens to consume their beloved daughter. Yet, as the final crescendo of pain heralds the birth of new life, hope and dread intertwine in a sinister dance. With trembling hands, Slavka cradles the newborn, a creature malformed by the taint of infernal origins. Its features contorted by an otherworldly malevolence, it gazes up at her with eyes that betray no innocence, only a chilling awareness that pierces through the veil of her shattered expectations. The newborn's cries, discordant and haunting, reverberate through the chamber, mingling with Slavka's own anguished wails. In that moment of surreal horror, reality fractures, giving way to a grotesque tableau of guilt and despair. The symbolism is stark and unyielding. The birth of a devilish child serves as a stark metaphor for Slavka's profound sense of culpability and the cruel absurdity of her fate. As dawn breaks on the horizon, casting feeble rays of light upon a world forever altered, Slavka clings to her parents' embrace, a fragile sanctuary amidst the chaos that threatens to engulf her shattered existence. Their words, though heavy with sorrow, offer a flicker of solace amidst the abyss, a beacon of hope that flickers faintly against the encroaching darkness. The tale of Slavka's childbirth is more than a macabre chronicle. It is a testament to the indomitable spirit's confrontation with inner demons and external forces beyond comprehension. It is a narrative woven with threads of existential dread and metaphysical torment, a chilling saga that resonates long after the final echoes of anguish fade into silence.